A young girl with black hair and white streaks greets a dark-haired man who stares in silence before scowling as she asks for directions to the academy. Sitting beside her on the stairs, the man wonders what the girl is staring at, feeling as though she were his own daughter. A hand extends toward him, offering a snack. Her foot taps softly against the ground as she turns around, assuming that is exactly what he was thinking. A decorative floral banner states that if he truly believes that, he is completely mistaken. Introducing herself as Calypso, she recalls dying in 3 past lives due to various tragic circumstances and failing to change the original story. Wearing a graduation cap, the young girl explains that the killer whale family is divided into land and aquatic beasts, and she is the grandchild of the villainous killer whale. In her family of killer whales, raw power and strength were the only traits that truly mattered. She stands trembling as she remembers being abandoned 3 times by her family due to her weakness. Determined to go back home, she plots to seek help from the Duke of Dragons, even taking revenge on her grandmother by insulting her before walking away from her father. After kicking her second brother and being requested to do the same by her third brother, she sighs with relief, ready to finally return home until she hears a soft sob. A young girl with round ears tears up amidst marigold flowers, crying out to be picked up. With a gentle shift, a gloved hand reaches down into a bed of red roses. Clutching an orca plush toy, the girl confidently declares that she will destroy anyone who gets in her way. A soft pat lands on her head as her silver-haired grandmother asks if she wants to be taught, though the girl hesitantly declines. She holds her grandmother's hand and walks away, wondering if she is finally heading back home. The dark-haired man sits with the young girl, asking her to join the staff. Under a bright blue sky, a puddle of blood stains the floor. Amidst fallen soldiers, a blue-eyed girl with black and white hair kneels on the ground, gasping for breath. A close-up reveals her bloodied face as she catches her breath in pain. A dark screen explains that those on the battlefield are the male lead and the sub-male lead. The corpses of the orca family's sons lie scattered across the stone fua. Standing amidst the wreckage, the bloodied girl looks down in despair. An open magical book floats in the air, explaining that this world operates like a parenting genre novel. The girl walks across a giant clock face, remembering her 3 past lives and complaining about being born into a family of villains. A sword pierces through a stuffed toy rabbit, highlighting how pitifully she has lived since being reincarnated. The girl looks up in shock as a mysterious figure in a white shirt stands before her. A mysterious man adorned with large blue dragon wings descends from the sky. She realizes that this powerful figure is none other than a living dragon, known as the Dragon Duke. Frustrated, she curses the male leads for driving the Dragon Duke mad. Clenching her gloved fist, she questions why they had to provoke him, lamenting the tragic ending of what should have been a peaceful parenting story. Blood trickles down her face as she whispers a final, bitter remark. Wounded and gasping, she looks up with wide, shocked eyes. She recognizes a vision of Soul in the sky, wondering why she is seeing her original home. Watching the Dragon Duke fly away, she realizes she might be able to return to her original world if she goes to him. Overjoyed at the prospect of returning home, she smiles brightly as she reaches out her hand. The Dragon Duke looks back, surrounded by crackling purple energy. With newfound determination, the girl stands up, surging with magical aura. Under a blinding flash of light, she vows to conquer the dragon in her next life. 2 women whisper behind a fan, wondering if this is the year for a dragon's bride. A mother carries her baby through a crowd of gossiping aristocrats who murmur about her lack of power. The baby girl stares ahead with determination, knowing she must find a way to be useful to her family. She smiles to herself, deciding that she will definitely become the dragon's bride in this life. She floats gently above a magical pool, remembering how she tried to alter the original story. She falls face first onto the wooden floor, remembering that all of her past attempts ended in complete failure. She sinks back into the depths of regression, suffering from a curse of endless repetition. Spotlights illuminate her past failures, where she died repeatedly due to the original male lead schemes. A hand reaches out toward a vision of Soul, realizing the Dragon Duke's power is her ticket back home. Nanny carries the young girl through the Grand Palace doors. The young girl stumbles as someone catches her, warning her to be careful. The grand double doors creak open as a voice criticizes someone's ruthlessness toward a child. Warm beams of light illuminate a baby crib resting quietly inside a spacious bedroom. A nearby voice dismisses the concern, justifying the cold treatment of the infant. Resting inside her decorated crib, young Calypso sighs softly in mild resignation. Knowing she is considered dispensable, she waits quietly as a sharp heel clacks against the floor. The powerful head of the orca family, Ocula Aquaciatl, arrives to inspect the room. Ocula looks down with sharp curiosity, noting that today is the scheduled day of inspection. Ocula stands before the crib with her assistant, evaluating the newborn child's presence. Rubbing her chin thoughtfully, Ocula quietly assesses the potential of her new grandchild. Calypso looks up with wide blue eyes, realizing she is about to receive her name. Ocula questions whether the quiet baby possesses the family's inherited magical power of water. The assistant nervously reviews a document detailing the family's legendary affinity for water magic. An ancient spell passed down through generations allows orca members to wield immense aquatic powers. Feeling disappointed by the lack of initial magic, Ocula asks if the baby is useless. Looking away in cold disgust, the family head prepares to abandon the quiet infant. The nervous assistant intervenes, attempting to formally register the baby girl's name. Without looking back, Ocula coldly pronounces the baby's name to be Calypso. Surrounded by delicate white flowers, Calypso despairs as Ocula prepares to leave her behind. As the adults turn toward the exit, Calypso refuses to let her life end here. She realizes she will be abandoned to die if she fails to grab her grandmother's attention. Gathering all of her tiny infant strength, Calypso lets out a loud, desperate shout. Calypso screams for them to wait, shocking both Ocula and her assistant into a halt. Demanding to know what was said, Ocula turns around in surprise as Calypso calls her grandmother. Ocula questions who taught her to speak, while her assistant explains typical toddler speech milestones. Ocula remains highly skeptical, noting that whale descendants usually start speaking much later. Rhythmic heel clacks ring out as Ocula slowly strides back toward the wooden crib. Calypso steels herself, determined to make the most of this tense confrontation. Ocula leans over the crib railing, inspecting the remarkably coherent infant with sharp eyes. Calypso raises her arms excitedly, proving to her grandmother that she can understand speech. The assistant quickly clarifies that Calypso has received no formal lessons from the maids. Calypso chuckles secretly, proud of using her past life intelligence to outsmart her grandmother. Annoyed by the repeated insults echoing in her mind, Ocula taps her temple in disbelief. A dangerous yet intrigued smile spreads across Ocula's face as she contemplates the infant's audacity. Suddenly, Ocula grabs Calypso by the back of her collar with a swift pinch. Lifting the baby high into the air, Ocula marvels at her sheer cheekiness. Calypso dangles helplessly from her grandmother's grip, maintaining a highly grumpy expression. Ocula stares closely at her, challenging the infant to prove her usefulness. Watching her grandmother walk away, Calypso's heart thumps as she plots her next move. Reaching out with her tiny hand, Calypso gently taps her grandmother's cheek. She puts on her sweetest, most innocent baby smile to disarm her cold relative. Deciding to take physical action, Calypso prepares to deliver a direct demonstration of her capability. With a sudden smack, Calypso grabs Ocula's hair, loudly declaring her ability to speak well. Waving her tiny fist, the determined baby proudly vows to prove her great worth. Looking out over a vision of her home city, Calypso promises to survive and return. While her assistant trembles in shock, Ocula grins widely at the infant's bold defiance. Ocula bursts into a loud, booming laugh, thoroughly amused by the baby's incredible insolence. She wonders how such a spirited child could come from her weak-willed father. Her sudden laughter sends Calypso tumbling backward into her crib with a soft thud. Fuming with annoyance, Calypso hates being treated like a helpless toddler. Walking away, Ocula orders her assistant to enroll the clever infant in an educational academy. The silver-haired matriarch strides away coldly, followed closely by her nervous, spectacle-wearing assistant. Ocula delivers a cold ultimatum, warning young Calypso that failure at the academy means immediate expulsion with no second chances. Undeterred, Calypso fiercely vows to master her abilities quickly, escape her family, and survive on her own terms. Later, a gentle maid cradles the young girl in her arms as they traverse the grand estate. Calypso looks at her tiny hands, realizing her infant body is still far too weak for the Academy's harsh demands. She considers finding a powerful guardian, knowing that surviving the Academy completely alone will be incredibly difficult. The maid gently places the blue-eyed child onto the floor, sparking curiosity in the young girl. The sweet maid bows deeply to her, showing a rare moment of genuine warmth and respect. Calypso notes the servant's sudden shift in attitude after her worth was acknowledged, dismissively sending the maid away. With a determined gaze, Calypso steels her resolve to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Calypso begins exploring her surroundings, toddling across the spacious room to find a way out. She schemes to find a powerful, neutral family member who is uninvolved in the cutthroat power struggles. The profile of her cold-hearted father, Pierre Acquisietto, looms amidst frosty and ominous skull patterns. She wanders into a grand sunlit atrium featuring towering arches and a pristine indoor water fountain. Remembering rumors of her father's total indifference toward his children, Calypso knows family bonds mean nothing to him. Despite her physical weakness, Calypso remains hopeful about harboring a hidden, immense power within herself. Calypso peers eagerly over the balcony, scanning the glittering courtyard for any sign of her target. Calypso recalls a past life conversation about her father, suddenly realizing those forgotten details are now highly valuable. She spots a dark-haired man sitting quietly by the fountain, immediately recognizing him as her father. Calypso halts in her tracks, her wide blue eyes locked onto the mysterious figure before her. She gets a closer look at the elegant man, noting his loose, partially unbuttoned white shirt. Calypso is struck by the ethereal beauty of her father, Pierre, who possesses captivating blue eyes. Putting on her most charming baby smile, Calypso cheerfully approaches the handsome man with a bright greeting. Calypso toddles over to her father and sweetly asks if he knows the way to the academy. As he silently observes her, Calypso marvels at his stunning looks, playfully recalling sayings about beautiful people. Pierre responds with absolute deadpan silence, completely ignoring the sparkling little girl standing right beside him. Calypso is thoroughly annoyed, realizing her adorable act was met with nothing but cold indifference. Pierre finally breaks his silence, dryly pointing out that she has been heading in the wrong direction. Seizing the opportunity, Calypso looks up with sparkling eyes and boldly asks if he can guide her. Pierre instantly shuts her down, coldly telling her to turn around and return the way she came. Sighing at how difficult life is, Calypso stubbornly scrambles up onto the fountain bench beside him anyway. Seeking to win his favor, Calypso pulls a piece of gathered dried fruit from her bag and offers it to him. Pierre stares down at her with a blank, unreadable expression, leaving her holding the piece of fruit awkwardly. After he walks away, Calypso casually eats the fruit herself, admitting she did not expect much success. Calypso speaks up again, curiously asking the silent man if he is lonely and always plays here alone. Frustrated by his continued silence, Calypso gets angry but decides simply making her presence known today as a victory. Realizing she has done enough for one day, Calypso hops down and prepares to make her exit. Surrounded by beautiful blue blossoms, the sweet farewell wishes of the young girl echo softly. Calypso flashes a brilliant, adorable smile and waves enthusiastically as she prepares to walk away. As she runs off, Pierre sits by the fountain and watches her departure with surprise. Pierre places his hand on the marble ledge, noticing the small, dusty footprint she left behind. Pierre watches Calypso run away, realizing she is his daughter and noting she has no idea who he is. Calypso playfully sticks out her tongue, confidently thinking that her father must be sharing the exact same thoughts. A helpful diagram explains that despite visual differences between family branches, their cold and indifferent personalities are identical. Calypso remains absolutely certain that her father would have no trouble recognizing her as his own. Night falls over the grand estate, casting a serene blue glow across the quiet mansion. Reaching up with all her tiny might, Calypso carefully opens a heavy, dark wooden door. Overhearing her caretakers, Calypso listens as the maids cruelly complain about dealing with a useless, powerless child. Calypso absorbs their harsh words, realizing how easily this family discards children deemed to have no value. The dark cobwebbed room serves as a chilling reminder of the fate awaiting children who fail to awaken powers. Looking at her father's striking profile, Calypso resolves that she needs Pierre's immediate help. A mischievous grin spreads across Calypso's face as she prepares to execute her plan. Standing proudly, Calypso remains confident that showcasing her genius will successfully pique Pierre's interest. Shielding her eyes from the bright morning sun, Calypso sets off to find Pierre. She recalls her brother's inherited strength, weeping over her own lack of willpower. With a strained grunt, Calypso desperately tries to manifest her water magic to no avail. Slumping in deep disappointment, Calypso laments that her magical attempts are simply not working. A blue dragon looms as she resolves to prioritize Pierre's favor over finding treasure. Calypso looks around the grand white atrium, wondering if she took a wrong turn. Catching sight of a fountain, she realizes she has arrived at the right place. Peeking from behind a marble pillar, Calypso wonders who else is in the courtyard. She overhears two boys gossiping about her inability to use the family's water magic. The boys mockingly discuss her impending fate of being sold as a dragon's bride. Calypso glares at them in quiet irritation, thoroughly unimpressed by their insulting rumors. The boys discuss their fear of Bion, while Calypso identifies them as rival collateral. The freckled boy suggests they harshly discipline the weak descendant to maintain their position. Lacking magical power, Calypso attempts to quietly slip away before they spot her. A sharp crack sounds out as her foot snaps a twig, instantly alerting her pursuers. Calypso bolts, her feet pattering quickly as she flees the scene in a panic. Crying out in panic, Calypso flees as the two angry boys give chase. Panting heavily beneath the green canopy, Calypso realizes her tiny body is completely exhausted. Gasping desperately for air, the young girl struggles to keep running from her pursuers. The boy's hand reaches out to grab her as Calypso grows dangerously weak. With a sudden slip, Calypso's tiny shoe loses traction on the stone pavement. An oppressive dread washes over Calypso as she realizes she has been caught. The boys corner her, mockingly questioning how a powerless weakling got the Lord's recognition. Lying face down on the ground, Calypso fumes silently as her anger boils over. Rising to her feet, Calypso coldly asks if they are Bion's collateral servants. Boys gawk in absolute shock, stunned that a mere toddler speaks so fluently. The freckled boy roughly pokes her forehead, calling her a useless, power-free pest. With a fierce snap, Calypso bites his finger. Well, that's one way to handle finger-pointing. Calypso swings wildly from his hand, refusing to let go as he screams in pain. He violently flings his hand back, shaking her off in a desperate panic. Landing safely, Calypso watches with amusement as the boy weeps over his bitten finger. Calypso spits on the ground and calmly asks if they are finished talking. Calypso passionately insults them, loudly calling them barbaric and primitive fish heads. The boys stand dumbfounded, completely bewildered by the furious toddler's fierce vocabulary. The freckled boy growls in anger, claiming he tried to reason with her gently. Realizing she cannot run away anymore, Calypso steels herself for a direct confrontation. He quickly acknowledges her immense physical disadvantage against two older and stronger opponents. Calypso boldly points her finger, warning them that her father Pierre will not tolerate this. The sudden, unexpected mention of Lord Pierre immediately strikes absolute terror into the bullies. She recalls the cutthroat competition among grandchildren trying to secure the head's recognition. Knowing they crossed a line, she is outraged by two older boys bullying a girl. The boys nervously reject her warning, pointing out Pierre's notorious indifference to everything. Calypso acts smug, claiming she was already on her way to meet her father. The boys begin sweating, genuinely worried about what Pierre might do to them. Calypso gleefully plots to use her father as a shield while the boys hesitate. The freckled boy shakes off his fear, determined to punish her for biting his finger. Calypso squeezes her eyes shut tightly, bracing herself for the impending physical blow. A powerful swirl of water sweeps across the sky as Calypso wishes she possessed water magic. A sudden surge of water blasts the freckled bully into the air as his companion gasps in shock. A loud splash echoes as the water recedes, leaving the bullies completely drenched and stunned. The dark-haired boy urgently shakes his companion, desperately telling him to wake up from a stupor. The dark-haired boy questions how Calypso could have summoned a water vortex, prompting Jay to nervously stammer in response. As Calypso stands calmly, the dark-haired boy furiously drags Jay away while Jay remains dazed by the water spell. Calypso looks down at her hands in utter disbelief, wondering what magical force just manifested. Calypso gleefully praises her own genius magic, completely oblivious to Pierre silently observing her from behind a tree. Calypso realizes her dirty clothes and wounds make her unfit to see Pierre, choosing to tend to her cuts instead. A gentle flow of water heals her bleeding hand, while Pierre secretly watches her depart and wonders if she knew his identity. Calypso walks away with a tired sigh, expressing a deep longing for the days when she was physically tough. Standing quietly by the tree trunk, Pierre watches her walk away with a calm, analytical expression. Pierre tilts his head in puzzlement, questioning why a tiny toddler would complain about missing her tough days. Calypso clenches her fists in frustration, realizing she has not truly awakened her family's legendary water magic. Hearing a knock on the door, Calypso is interrupted as a voice calls out to check on her. Turning around with a curious look, Calypso gives permission for the visitor to enter her quarters. A warm and polite new maid with orange hair introduces herself as Misa, bowing elegantly before Calypso. Misa requests Calypso's favor, while Calypso celebrates her sudden upgrade in status from a mere miss to a princess. Misa smiles and delivers the news that the date for Calypso's entry into the primary academy has been officially set. Staring at the maid's braided hair and scales, Calypso is struck by a sense of familiarity, wondering where they met. A flashback of a grand ship under a bright sky reminds Calypso of the dual requirements needed to fight land beasts. Memory reveals that a successful unit requires both a powerful water commander and a beast capable of locating vital water sources. Looking at Misa's cheerful smile, Calypso realizes the maid's true identity as a legendary beast, despite her current ignorance. Calypso decides to memorize this discovery for future use, leaving a confused Misa standing behind her. The maid's voice echoes through the room, curiously asking Calypso where she is planning to go. When Calypso mentions taking a walk, Misa warns her about the surrounding ruins and offers to accompany her for her own safety. Misa looks startled and worried, gasping as she looks down at the young girl. Calypso looks up at Misa, her sharp blue eyes noting the faint, scaly patterns on the maid's skin. Calypso is haunted by grim memories of her family threatening to sell her off or expel her if she fails to prove her worth. A dark memory resurfaces of the two maids cruelly whispering behind her back, wishing for her swift disposal. Reaching out with her tiny hand, Calypso comfortingly pats Misa's head, surprising the maid with her kindness. Misa is overwhelmed with emotion, blushing deeply and tearing up at Calypso's surprisingly tender gesture. Calypso beams with a sparkling, angelic smile, easily capturing the maid's loyalty with her pure charm. Calypso cheerfully strolls out of the room, leaving Misa completely spellbound by her adorable princess. The indoor fountain glistens in the sunlight as a white-sleeved arm reaches down to touch the cool water. Calypso approaches Pierre at the fountain with a bright smile, casually greeting him as Mister. With arms crossed, Pierre stares down at Calypso and dryly asks if she takes him for a fool. As a shadowy energy looms behind her, Calypso warns herself that her father cannot afford to ignore her potential. Calypso flashes a cheerful, innocent smile and directly asks Pierre if he is capable of using water magic. Pierre sits back by the pool and skeptically questions why he should teach her, demanding to know her reasoning. Calypso looks up with glittering eyes, cheekily offering him the rare opportunity to train a legendary genius disciple. Pierre dryly wonders who taught her to be so cheeky, only for Calypso to immediately blame her father. While Calypso proudly praises her father's unmatched capability and good looks, Pierre sits in deep thought, questioning his own past behavior. A gentle text bubble describes a loving father who is incredibly soft-hearted and weeps whenever his child is injured. Pierre listens in silent bewilderment as Calypso happily sings praises about her incredibly affectionate father. A warm flashback shows Calypso's previous adoptive parents whose overwhelming love made her completely forget she was adopted. Calypso looks back at her irreplaceable past life family, strengthening her secret resolve to find a way back to them. A sudden tug draws attention as Calypso's small hand firmly grips Pierre's jacket sleeve. Calypso turns her face upward, her blue eyes filled with an unyielding determination to secure his help. Calypso cheekily tells Pierre that her father is too busy, demanding that the seemingly idle Mr. help her instead. Calypso gasps in sudden surprise as an unseen powerful pressure suddenly begins to weigh down on her. Calypso darts her wide blue eyes to the side in nervous anticipation of her companion's next move. Pierre exerts his water magic to apply physical pressure on Calypso, testing her resilience against the fluid force. Calypso declares her ambition to master water magic before entering the academy to become the top student. Pierre solemnly warns her that forcing a magical awakening before she is ready could prove fatal. Calypso nonchalantly shrugs off the danger, boldly stating she does not mind risking her life to succeed. While Pierre silently questions her sanity, Calypso argues that extreme risk is essential to achieving greatness. Calypso proudly asserts that her father would expect nothing less than for her to become outstanding. Pierre silently questions why she tells such blatant lies when she clearly knows his true identity. Calypso turns back with an innocent look, directly asking the mysterious Mister to help her train. Calypso boasts of her high intelligence, only to gasp as she is suddenly lifted by water. Pierre holds her suspended in a stream of water, calmly pondering the contradictions in her behavior. Pierre challenges her by asking how she plans to handle getting caught without proper magical control. The narration questions whether a father who demands absolute strength without offering any help truly loves her. Pierre uses his water magic to gently float Calypso through the air, earning her bright adoration. Calypso beams with pure joy, completely captivated by the magical water currents floating her alongside Pierre. Calypso ecstatically proclaims to the sky that her father is the absolute best in her eyes. Pierre listens in quiet contemplation as she continues calling her father the coolest person alive. The sunlit water of the garden fountain sparkles, signaling a quiet transition in their training session. Pierre sternly warns her that he will not show any leniency during training, regardless of her age. Pierre sets a strict schedule, commanding her to meet him at the fountain every single day.
Calypso stands completely frozen in shock, processing her new teacher's surprisingly strict demands.
Calypso's eyes sparkle with absolute joy as she celebrates securing Pierre as her personal magic instructor. Calypso cheekily asks whether she should call him Master or Mister, to which he indifferently shrugs. Calypso enthusiastically decides to call him Master, confident that her magical awakening is finally within reach. Walking happily beside Pierre, Calypso resolves to never regret her decision to seek his tutelage. The narration reflects that while awakening her magic was crucial, learning to control it was harder. Calypso recalls her fortunate meeting with a mysterious genius woman who taught her how to control magic. The genius woman kindly offers to guide Calypso through a unique method to master water control. Calypso recalls the genius advising her that continuous immersion in water is key to controlling magic. Pierre instructs Calypso to start by exposing herself directly to water, leaving her utterly confused. A sudden splash sounds as Pierre indifferently commands her to dive directly into the deep fountain. Calypso questions his bizarre instruction, but Pierre firmly repeats his command to dive in. Pierre explains that danger triggers awakenings, offering to switch to harsher physical training if she refuses. Calypso nervously inquires about his other training methods, sweating as she senses his underlying intensity. Pierre lists several brutally harsh trials, leaving Calypso sweating in absolute silence in sheer dread. Terrified of the extreme physical trials, Calypso reluctantly decides that diving is her best option. Loud splash echoes as Calypso holds her nose and plunges deep into the water. Floating underwater, Calypso inwardly complains that the training intensity is far too extreme for her age. Calypso vividly imagines the brutal physical alternatives, like performing 500 weighted push-ups in agony. She shudders at the thought of running tirelessly for 10 hours under his relentless supervision. Calypso floats quietly underwater, waiting patiently to feel any spark of magical connection to water. Beneath the surface, Calypso begins to feel a faint pulsing heartbeat of magic surrounding her. A sudden surge of panic hits Calypso as her lungs scream for air underwater. Calypso violently bursts through the surface of the fountain, gasping and coughing for oxygen. Clinging desperately to the stone edge, Calypso wheezes heavily and declares she almost died. Pierre stands beside her, his hand covering his mouth in quiet concern as she struggles. Pierre bluntly questions if she is an amoeba, utterly unimpressed by her lack of response. Pierre cruelly claims that even amoebas possess more magical talent and responsiveness than her. Chibi Calypso weeps over his harsh criticism, tearfully complaining that his words wound her deeply. Calypso asks if Pierre considered her young age, but he argues that age is irrelevant if she can survive training. A sudden tight squeeze sounds as Calypso silently clenches her wet hand in absolute resolve. Calypso smiles to herself, feeling a tiny spark of magic finally begin to stir inside her body. Though still lagging behind her genius brothers, Calypso is determined to become a powerhouse in this life. A carriage arrives at the sunlit academy grounds, signaling the start of her new school life. Calypso stands elegantly dressed, mentally preparing herself to officially enter the institution. Calypso dryly reflects on her tragic past lives, recalling her rapid downfall in both instances. A sharp tap of footsteps echoes as a shadowy figure approaches and welcomes her to the school. A refined, gray-haired woman introduces herself as the administrator in charge of the primary education branch. The woman formally introduces herself as Layla, the head of the primary education institution. Layla warmly welcomes Calypso, leaving the young princess momentarily startled by her familiarity. Calypso recalls being expelled in her third life due to schemes accusing her of stealing a gem. A flashback shows Layla calmly stepping in to defend Calypso during their first meeting in her past life. Layla argued that there was not enough concrete evidence to accuse the young girl of any crime. Layla stood alone with a calm expression representing her unwavering sense of justice. Despite Layla's rational defense, Calypso was powerless to prevent her swift expulsion from the school back then. Calypso eventually returned to the institution much later in life to claim her position as head of the family. A soft rustle of fabric sounds as Calypso gracefully curtsies, politely greeting Layla with a bright smile. Layla stares down in utter astonishment, completely caught off guard by the toddler's incredibly sophisticated manners. Layla expresses her amazement that a 3-year-old child can speak so perfectly and display such impeccable etiquette. Layla warmly offers to guide the young princess directly to the classroom she will be joining. Calypso looks back with a curious glance, pondering Layla's unexpectedly kind and polite attitude. Soft, rhythmic taps of footsteps sound as Layla deliberately slows her pace to walk alongside the toddler. Layla opens the door while Calypso regretfully realizes she never got to thank her in her previous life. Quiet babbling noises echo from the classroom marked with a blue dolphin sign as Layla requests everyone's attention. Layla introduces Calypso as the newest classmate to the toddlers playing with toy blocks on the floor. Calypso confidently steps into the room, instantly drawing the curious stares of the young children. Nearby staff whisper in admiration, praising the new lady's beautiful appearance and impressive speaking skills. Layla secretly observes her, noting that failing to control water magic is a fatal flaw for an orca. Calypso glances back over her shoulder, fully aware of Layla's sharp and critical gaze. Narration explains that since orcas grow slowly, Calypso's early speech confirms her status as a genius. Layla determines to uncover any conspiracy if the family is attempting to hide a secret regarding her. A maid nervously approaches Layla, whispering that continuing class is impossible due to the young lady's behavior. Calypso bluntly refuses to play childish block games, causing a boy to cry before she awkwardly comforts him. A cute green-haired girl steps forward, shyly offering Calypso a piece of plankton candy. A gentle patting sound is heard as Calypso strokes her head, gratefully accepting the sweet gift. Calypso turns back with a bright smile, casually addressing Layla by name to start a conversation. Layla flinches in surprise, asking the young girl if she requires more testing to determine her class. Layla sighs softly, suggesting that the brilliant princess should immediately be promoted to a much higher class. Calypso stands proudly, her blue eyes shining with absolute confidence and a touch of mischief. Calypso celebrates inwardly, declaring that she has been waiting for this exact opportunity to prove herself. The Grand Academy building stands majestic under the clear blue sky as the scene transitions. Walking through the sunlit corridor, Layla asks Calypso which specific class she would prefer to join. Calypso peers through the windows, determined to select the class that will catch her grandmother's eye. Calypso imagines herself teaching advanced material, resolved to present herself as the absolute definition of a genius. Calypso demands to be placed in the 8th Whale class of the Elite Alpha section, the highest tier. Layla is visibly startled, staring at the toddler in utter disbelief at her incredibly ambitious request. Calypso crosses her arms confidently, challenging Layla to find any student in that class who speaks better. Layla smiles softly, conceding that the young princess will undoubtedly become the absolute best student there. Layla solemnly reminds her that she must fully bear the consequences of her exceptionally bold choices. Calypso proudly declares that she is not being treated like a typical 3-year-old child. Layla smiles softly, admitting that she is indeed thoroughly impressed by the young girl's intelligence. Layla recalls the surprise of when Calypso's third brother first entered the grand institution. Layla questions who informed Calypso about the academy's strict educational curriculum. Calypso playfully peeks out from behind Layla's dress, preparing to answer her question. Maids gasp in utter disbelief when Calypso reveals that her father was her source. Calypso cheerfully boasts that her father explained the entire system to her in great detail. Layla stands in stunned silence as Calypso continues to radiate sheer confidence in the corridor. Layla agrees to guide her to the chosen class as Calypso smugly celebrates her success. Calypso runs down the blue-walled corridor, leaving the flabbergasted maids watching from the doorway. Layla internally questions if the distant Sir Pierre truly interacted with his young daughter. Public rumors dictate that the cold Sir Pierre has never once visited any of his children. Layla hilariously imagines a warm secret bonding session between the cold father and his daughter. Layla notes that rumors always spread far more rapidly than actual truth within the estate. Layla reasons that with her father's guidance, Calypso's magical awakening is only a matter of time. Layla trembles, realizing that a powerful new successor challenger has officially entered the family race. The warm sunlight bathes a cluster of vibrant orange flowers as a new scene begins. Calypso internally notes that her initial plan proceeded much more smoothly than she had anticipated. Her dark-haired master suddenly appears, questioning what exactly went so smoothly for her. Calypso joyfully gloats that her exceptional talents have finally received the recognition they deserve. Calypso playfully calls her master a killjoy, though she begrudgingly accepts his unenthusiastic reaction. Calypso cheekily points out her impressive ability to converse with such a socially awkward adult. When her master threatens her with extra laps, Calypso quickly offers an alternative task. Calypso angrily flexes her tiny arm, boasting about her unmatched endurance and perspective strength. Her master finds it bizarre that her physical capabilities improved despite her lack of magic. Her master turns and walks away from the fountain as Calypso watches him expectantly. Her master instructs her to follow him to begin their next round of training. The scene shifts to a grand, ornate white palace gleaming beautifully under the golden sunset. Calypso looks around in sheer awe, admiring her master's remarkably beautiful and luxurious home. Her master explains his modest living situation is due to falling out of favor. They arrive before a massive dark wooden double door basking in the warm light. The master opens the door to reveal a room completely cluttered with messy papers. Calypso deadpans, bluntly asking her master if he has brought her to a pigsty. Her master acts offended by the comparison, prompting Calypso to offer a sarcastic apology. Her master casually sits down on the sofa, bluntly ordering her to clean it up. Calypso stands bewildered, questioning the logic of this task as her master repeats his order. Calypso sighs heavily, questioning why their training involves cleaning instead of direct physical combat. Her master queries if she believes the training relates to awakening her elemental endurance. Calypso deduces that he wants her to utilize her water magic to complete the chore. Her master details the 3 primary stages of training, including intimidation, materialization, and restriction removal. The scroll illustrates the final stage, which involves utilizing water power to enhance physical strength. The desk stands cluttered with ancient books, potion bottles, and a single lit candle. Her master explains that she must consistently practice her enhancement magic to trigger a full awakening. Calypso begins cleaning, wondering if her strange master deliberately messed up the room for training. Calypso struggles to lift a heavy box of books, calling out to her master. Calypso carries the box while noting the reappearance of that familiar, strange expression on his face. Calypso observes his peaceful, painless expression, wondering if his underlying illness is causing this melancholy. Night falls over the grand mansion, blanketed by a stunning starry blue sky. While tidying up the room, Calypso suddenly pauses as she spots a mysterious item. Calypso asks her master where to place a lovely seashell-patterned white handkerchief she found. Calypso holds the seashell-patterned handkerchief, but Pierre bluntly commands her to throw it away as he walks away. Pierre turns back with a gentle, melancholic expression, his quiet gaze filled with silent sorrow. Calypso suspects Pierre's dismissive reaction hides the handkerchief's true importance, trusting her past life's knowledge. Calypso pretends to comply with his order while secretly hiding the precious handkerchief in her dress pocket. When Calypso questions if the handkerchief is his, Pierre quietly denies it and continues walking away. Calypso's eyes widen in surprise as a sudden magical glow envelops her heavy burden. Calypso gasps in surprise, startled by the sudden voice speaking to her without any warning. Calypso reflects on her repetitive past lives, searching her memories for any trace of her mysterious mother. She recalls the sole fragment of truth about her mother being a kind-hearted orca beastkin. Beyond that single memory, her mother's complete history remains securely locked away like a chained heart. Calypso decides not to pry further, but Pierre dryly remarks that her training tasks seem far too easy. Calypso strongly protests his claim, but Pierre dismisses her complaints and urges her to hurry up. Pierre mockingly asks if she plans to clean all night, prompting Calypso to curse her relentless father internally. Despite the endless complaints, Calypso notes that continuously channeling her powers is steadily strengthening her body. She admits that this magical chore makes her feel far stronger than simple physical running. Pierre stands by silently, closely monitoring her progress as she meticulously organizes the cluttered room. Warm morning light bathes the grand white towers of the academy as a new day begins. Layla watches in concern as an exhausted Calypso barely musters a tired response. Knowing returning home makes meeting Pierre difficult, Calypso resolves to endure his absurd repetitive training rules. While Calypso contemplates quitting the brutal training, Layla politely steps forward to address the princess. Layla offers to escort her to the hall, leaving Calypso surprised by her sudden, polite attitude. Layla reveals that Calypso has already become quite famous in a single day, shocking the young girl. Calypso's completely flabbergasted to learn her exploits have already spread to 16 orca branch families. Layla explains that the talkative teachers, including one descendant of a flying fish, spread the gossip. Calypso sweat drops, acknowledging that flying fish beastkin are indeed notoriously known for their chatty nature. She realizes that the Academy must perceive her rapid rise in talents as a scandalous rumor. Layla notes some hope for scandal, while Calypso reflects on the 32 orca branch families. Each of the branch families supports different successors, vying fiercely for control over the family lineage. Ominous, glowing-eyed figures lurk in the shadows, waiting for any sign of weakness. Layla leads Calypso up the grand blue carpeted staircase toward their final destination. Layla glances back with a quiet, analytical expression, observing the young princess's composure. Calypso takes each step with remarkable ease, showing no physical strain despite her age. Layla marvels at Calypso's incredible physical endurance, easily climbing the massive staircase at age 3. Layla lists the formidable rivals, including Bellis, Bayon, Sorte, and her genius eldest brother. Calypso smugly asks Layla what she thinks of her unmatched and impressive capabilities. Layla sweat drops, admitting that the young princess's every single action is genuinely astonishing. Layla issues a gentle warning advising the confident young princess to brace herself. They arrive at the prestigious Alpha class, with Calypso proudly celebrating her rapid genius-level placement. Calypso radiates pure joy and confidence, ready to conquer whatever challenges lie ahead. Layla opens the classroom door as Calypso confidently steps inside without a single hesitation. A warm, soft smile graces Layla's face as she watches the young girl enter. Narration explains that the whale clans are exceptionally peaceful and highly tolerant of other races. Cute, white-clad whale children play together peacefully under a sky filled with gentle whales. In stark contrast to the peaceful whales, Ethan, the terrifying killer whale, stands out menacingly. The noisy chatter of the classroom signals that the day's lesson is finally concluded. A sudden cry erupts as one student tearfully accuses Karan of hitting him. The teacher strictly orders Karan to refrain from causing further disruptions in the class. Karen, identified as the killer whale, dismisses the scolding lazily with a half-hearted response. Karen scoffingly complains about the childish games, completely unbothered by the chaotic classroom environment. The tearful blonde twins Ruga and Ruba cling to each other in distress. Karen raises his fist in anger, claiming the boy with white hair is not even worth his time. The white-haired twin boys nod and agree that Karen is behaving as usual while someone tells them to be quiet. The teacher commands the classroom to pay attention as a new student arrives. The teacher introduces the new student Calypso and asks the class to welcome her with applause. Karen is shocked, realizing that Calypso is a direct descendant. Karen recalls the rumors that Pierre's powerless daughter was born useless and destined to be married off. Dark Thought questions how such a powerless child could be born to Lord Pierre. The teacher kindly invites Calypso to introduce herself to her new classmates. Karen smirks maliciously, plotting to make the young newcomer cry. Calypso smiles and prepares to introduce herself to her new peers. Calypso greets the classroom with a bright, charming smile. Narration explains that this orca-established institution operates strictly under the law of the jungle. The girls in the class gush over Calypso's beauty and elegant way of speaking. Calypso politely curtsies as she continues her introduction to the class. The teacher enthusiastically praises Calypso's introduction and requests another round of applause. The classroom erupts into loud applause as Calypso stands confidently at the front. Calypso watches calmly as Karan suddenly approaches her. Karen confrontationally asks Calypso about her hair color as she notes his arrival. Karen demands to know Calypso's identity and age after introducing himself as an 8-year-old. Karen mockingly calls her adorable, but Calypso boldly retorts by calling him a stupid guy. Calypso sighs as Karen tells her she shouldn't be talking if she's such a mess. Calypso points out that an 8-year-old still in this class is nothing but a fool. Calypso proudly states she is only 3 and asks Karen if he feels no shame. Karen angrily argues about normal speaking ages, while Calypso refuses to be placed on his level. Karen raises his fist to strike the insulting runt, but Calypso's eyes flash with magic. Calypso suddenly leaps forward, unleashing a powerful physical strike. Ron is sent flying back in shock as Calypso decides to teach him some manners. Calypso firmly grabs Karen by the collar to secure her hold on him. Calypso delivers a devastating headbutt straight to Karen's forehead. Karen crashes heavily onto the floor, completely defeated by the sudden attack. Karen groans about the dirty headbutt as the girls look on in complete shock. Calypso dismisses Karen's complaints about her fighting method, citing their massive size difference. Calypso calmly inspects the cracked floor beneath her, leaving Karen trembling in fear. Calypso clenches her fist, warning that she has absolutely no intention of tolerating insults. Calypso lets the crushed stone crumble to show off her terrifying raw physical strength. Calypso instantly switches back to a sweet, innocent smile as her classmates cheer wildly. The teacher and a distinguished gray-haired woman named Camille watch the display in awe. Camille wonders how Calypso could overpower Karan, who possesses exceptional natural physical strength. A voice marvels at how easily the young girl subdued Karan. Calypso internally plans to use this victory to spread rumors about her incredible talents. Calypso celebrates her successful takeover, noting that everything has proceeded exactly as planned. Calypso smugly declares herself the boss of the land after conquering the classroom. The teacher orders everyone back to their seats, declaring that great whales must study hard. Calypso stretches under the warm sun, reflecting on her incredibly fulfilling first day. Camille decides Calypso will stay in the beginner institution for a very long time. Calypso wears a mischievous grin, clearly planning her next moves within the academy. The white-haired twin boys chase after Calypso, eagerly calling out to her. The polite twin boys bow deeply, offering a cheerful greeting to their new lady. The twins stare at Calypso with sparkling eyes, eagerly awaiting a response. Calypso recognizes the twins as intelligent beluga dolphins, noted for their righteous characters. Calypso's sweat drops, wondering why someone would beat up these soft-headed twin boys. Calypso curiously looks at the white-haired boy and asks for his name. The white-haired twins smile brightly and enthusiastically introduce themselves together as Rugaruba. Calypso stares in deadpan silence as the twins continue chanting their name. Calypso politely greets them, noting they are her first acquaintances sharing her name. Is there anything else? Calypso suddenly freezes mid-thought as a crucial realization flashes in her mind. In her memories, a blue-haired scholar arrogantly refuses to follow orders because of his intellect. Calypso remembers that her third-grade teacher was also a dolphin beastman. Calypso recalls her clever former teacher while the twins express their deep gratitude to her. The twins eagerly promise to be kind, leaving Calypso sweat-dropping in confusion. Standing on the stairs, the twins patronizingly ask if Calypso is strong enough to climb them. Calypso gasps in sheer shock as she is suddenly lifted off her feet. Twins joyfully carry Calypso down the stairs, eagerly declaring themselves her new helpers. A passing maid watches in sweat-dropping disbelief as Calypso is carried like a doll. Calypso gets off her carriage, waving goodbye to her energetic new twin underlings. Calypso celebrates her success in acquiring a pair of loyal, cute underlings. Walking onto the grounds, Calypso is greeted by several maids and a blonde butler. Calypso looks around in surprise, noticing many unfamiliar servant faces gathered there. The handsome blonde butler smiles warmly at Calypso as she approaches. The grand building glows under the sunset as Calypso questions the gathering's purpose. The butler politely explains that the servants were sent from her domain to assist her. Overhearing the maid's nervous whispers, Calypso decides to personally select her own caretaker. Calypso points directly at an orange-haired maid and calls her by name, Misa. Calypso sparkles with absolute confidence as she points her finger to make her choice. The orange-haired maid, Misa, looks on in complete surprise as she is chosen. Calypso names Misa as her choice, remembering her as the only kind person from her past. Calypso reflects on how Misa was the only one who ensured she had meals. The butler is shocked to hear about the staff being deprived of proper food. Calypso sighs and indifferently explains that child neglect is standard practice for her family. The narrative questions if enduring scalding hot baths to the point of burns is also standard. Calypso firmly states that child abuse and neglect are not trials to be overcome. The blonde butler's expression darkens with deep disgust and sweat drops as he learns of the abuse. Calypso smugly threatens to tell her father Pierre everything, sending the butler into a panic. Terrified of Pierre's anger, the butler desperately begs Calypso to let him investigate the staff. Calypso coolly agrees, noting that other children might have suffered from the abuse too. Chibi Calypso angrily vows to expose the abusive staff and make them pay for their sins. Calypso reaches out and gently tugs on the skirt of the orange-haired maid. Calypso smiles warmly and requests Misa to take good care of her from now on. Kneeling down, Misa holds Calypso's hands with a warm, relieved smile on her face. The Grand Academy building stands majestic under a bright, clear blue sky. Misa shields her eyes from the sun while carrying a laundry basket outside. Calypso stands with a serious look, reflecting on how child neglect is never a trial. Misa looks back in quiet contemplation, remembering Calypso's bold claim of being a genius. Reading a book, Calypso gasps as she suddenly recalls a key detail from her past life. Calypso recalls how the intelligent white dolphin family was tragically wiped out in her third life. She remembers that her uncle's son, Bayon, brutally massacred them out of sheer annoyance. Looking determined, Calypso decides there is no need to gather allies since she will leave soon. Sitting on the floor reading, Calypso is unaware of the maids sneaking up behind her. The maids startle Calypso with adoring praise, causing her to cry out in shock. The maids squeal and swoon in delight over Calypso's incredibly adorable studying appearance. The maids gush over Calypso, praising her tiny hands and her legendary intelligence. The maids squeal over Calypso's cute voice, leaving the sweat-dropping toddler completely overwhelmed. Calypso glances back as Bio sighs in relief that the main house staff arrived safely. The grand mansion stands beautifully bathed in warm sunlight behind leafy green branches. The maids explain they are herring beastmen and childhood friends from the same town. Ea, Bio, and Dede cheerfully introduce themselves, proudly identifying as herring beastmen. The maids praise Calypso's speech, comparing her intelligence and cuteness to Belus and Atlan. Calypso politely cuts off their excessive praise, suggesting they end their conversation there. Calypso introduces Misa as her nanny, politely requesting that everyone gets along with her. The maids enthusiastically welcome Misa, urging her to speak comfortably as the new nanny. Calypso instructs the maids to wait behind while she leaves to meet her father. Calypso runs away to escape their endless chatter, leaving the maids amazed by her. Running down the corridor, Calypso happily reflects on how the place finally feels like home. A narration box declares the environment is calmer and more peaceful than ever before. Calypso closes her eyes tightly, preparing herself with a deeply focused and determined expression. A massive burst of water washes over laundry, with a caption noting one final exception. Standing by the fountain, Calypso questions her master about whether doing laundry is real training. Pierre stands elegantly on the balcony, looking down with a cool, detached expression. Pierre sharply asks how many times he must repeat himself before she understands his instructions. Pierre coldly orders Calypso to step on the clothes, causing the toddler to sweat drop. Calypso stomps away in irritation, angrily cursing her father for his unreasonable training methods. Calypso complains about the absurd chore, questioning the rumors of Pierre's obsession with cleanliness. Pierre sighs, questioning if she is still unable to summon water for the rinsing. Frustrated, Calypso angrily declares that she absolutely hates speaking to a natural-born genius. Pierre dismisses her claims of popularity, mocking the declining standards of modern Orca children. Recalling her brother's complaints, Calypso deadpans and agrees that their father is completely hopeless. Calypso reluctantly complies with the training, asking her master how to step on the clothes properly. Calypso gasps in surprise as she feels her foot sinking successfully into the laundry. Calypso squeals with delight, eagerly asking her master if he witnessed her successful step. Calypso boasts that shifting her weight properly compensates for her small, toddler-sized body. Pierre's brilliant blue eye widens in utter astonishment at the toddler's clever solution. Pierre stands silently beneath leafy lemon branches, looking exceptionally handsome and deeply thoughtful. Pierre remains standing in quiet contemplation, bathed in the soft, glowing garden light. Pierre turns and walks away in silence, leaving the young princess watching his departure. Calypso skips happily, confident that Pierre has finally recognized her as his daughter. Calypso beams with a pure, radiant smile amidst a flurry of sweet flower petals. Narration boxes explain that Pierre received constant attention throughout his life but remained entirely indifferent. A blue-haired woman proposes a bet to Pierre, predicting a similar person will surprise him. Calypso is startled by Pierre's sudden appearance, calling out to her master in surprise. Calypso asks if he came down early, quickly reassuring him that the laundry is nearly done. Calypso hesitates, pondering what she should call him if she speaks without thinking. Pierre silently wonders if she should call him Dad, while Calypso looks on in confusion. Calypso proudly boasts of her work, prompting Pierre to tease her by asking whose daughter she is. Calypso smiles brilliantly, proudly declaring that she is, of course, her dad's daughter. Pierre stands completely frozen, staring at the smiling toddler with a blank, stunned expression. Pierre bitterly recalls his own father, who never once appeared during his toddler years. Calypso yells at him in irritation, asking if he realized he was being manipulated. Pierre crosses his arms, calmly admitting that her level of intelligence is actually quite impressive. Calypso boasts of being trained by her master, prompting Pierre to tell her to stop mentioning him. Calypso smiles sheepishly, cutely noting that her master is indeed the one who taught her. The narration observes that his face seems entirely uninterested in anything in the world. Calypso wonders why her master lives alone as she walks past his tall figure. Calypso's voice asks if he hates being around people while Pierre lies bedridden. Servants whisper that Pierre's water power is wasted because he is too weak. Pierre lies sweating on his pillow, listening to the harsh murmurs with a tired look. A narration bubble describes him as a vessel unable to contain such an amazing ability. Pierre reflects that life is simply easier without bothersome people around him. A voice asks if that is why he looks so indifferent, like someone ready to disappear. Pierre silently looks down and admits that the observation is not entirely wrong. A swift motion of a child's hand cuts through the quiet air. Pierre gasps in shock as Calypso suddenly slaps him, breaking his deep thoughts. Pierre stares down at the toddler in utter bewilderment, whispering in disbelief. Trembling with indignation, Calypso demands to know how he could say such a thing. Calypso angrily lectures him for speaking so lightly when others have lived incredibly difficult lives. She furiously hits him, asking if he is crazy for saying such things in front of a 3-year-old. Calypso pouts, asking if he realizes his peaceful future is exactly what a regressor like her wants. Clenching her tiny fist, Calypso declares that her master is living his life far too passively. With bright blue eyes, Calypso enthusiastically tells him that he needs to learn the beauty of life. Pierre is left entirely dumbfounded, staring blankly while questioning her bizarre outburst. Calypso proposes that since he is training her, they should become business partners. Pierre sweat drops, commenting that her choice of words is highly confusing. Calypso flashes a brilliant, innocent smile and confidently tells him to trust her. Pierre watches in silence as the energetic toddler happily dashes away from him. Calypso's determined expression shows she is already planning her next big move. A servant addresses Pierre, noting that there is something he might not know yet. The servant recalls how Calypso has been going around bragging about how much Pierre loves her. Pierre's hand twitches as the servant asks if those claims are merely a rumor. Pierre silently wonders what benefit Calypso hopes to gain by spreading such rumors. Calypso waves energetically, calling out to her master and teasing him for being too slow. A narration bubble fondly describes her as a very thorough little brat. Pierre notes with interest that she never makes a mistake with her titles. A majestic mansion stands under a clear blue sky as someone asks if the lady is done. A massive, colorful tower of toy blocks stands perfectly assembled on the floor. The energetic twins cheerfully announce that they have both finished going their towers. When the twins invite her to play hide-and-seek, Calypso flatly refuses such childish games. The twins find her refusal incredibly cool, noting she talks just like their father. Calypso advises them to use that style of speech only when they are older. The twins share that their mother wants to meet and thank Calypso. They happily explain that Karen's beatings no longer hurt thanks to her help. Calypso casually asks if she should beat up Karen some more to help them. Eagerly swearing eternal loyalty, the twins bring a triumphant smile to Calypso's face. Calypso tells them she wants nothing but asks them a very specific question. Calypso wonders if they have ever cooked fish, clarifying the difference from marine beastmen. The twins look incredibly excited at the mere mention of cooked fish. The twins turn to look at each other in sudden, silent contemplation. The twins joyfully boast that they have cooked and their dad is great at it. The twins suddenly lean in close, surprising Calypso with their sudden burst of energy. Calypso decides they should ask their talented father some questions about his cooking methods. The scene transitions to a peaceful garden filled with maids and children playing together. Calypso looks on with a confident and highly satisfied expression on her face. An adorable octopus-shaped sausage on a fork is offered to the young princess. Calypso eagerly takes a bite of the delicious snack, enjoying her quiet lunchtime. Aya and Bio squeal with absolute delight at how incredibly adorable Calypso looks while eating. The scene shifts to the sunny palace courtyard where a maid notes that Calypso brought her own lunch. Aya and Bio shower Calypso with excessive compliments, marveling at her cute pale face and gentle nature. Calypso wipes her mouth, silently reflecting that while bluntness is useful, this level of coddling is unnecessary. Recognizing that meals are vital for her growth, Calypso passionately declares that she only needs growth in dragons. Didi thoughtfully mentions that the Grand Dragon Festival is scheduled to take place again this year. Narration boxes explain that the Dragon Festival is a grand event held in Dragon City by the Imperial family. The festival serves to showcase Imperial authority, keeping the Duke of Dragon's massive power under their watchful eye. Aya notes that only land animals and terrestrial beastmen will be invited to the festival this time. Bio expresses her disappointment, wishing to see it while noting underwater beings like mermaids are excluded. Calypso silently contemplates that she would also love to catch a glimpse of the legendary Dragon Duke. Calypso's attention is captured as she suddenly stops eating, listening intently to the maid's conversation. Bio excitedly claps her hands, announcing to everyone that the head of the family will be returning soon. Calypso freezes in surprise, clutching her sandwich as she absorbs the sudden news of her father's return. When Calypso innocently asks if he will return soon, Aya and Bio squeal over her immense cuteness. As the maids coo over her, Calypso sweat drops and tries to correct their overly dramatic reactions. Resigned, Calypso delivers a flawless, sparkling wink, sending the maids into another frenzy of absolute adoration. Didi explains that the family head has been away, but he will immediately call a family meeting upon returning. Didi praises Calypso's sharp awareness, proudly boasting that their water sisters are positioned everywhere to gather information. Calypso ponders deeply, scheming for a way to officially get her name included in the upcoming family meeting. With a determined glint in her eye, Calypso realizes her older brothers are the key to her plan. She recalls her brother's dramatic submission, where they knelt and begged the victor to step over them. Remembering their bizarre submissive antics, Calypso sweat drops in horror as she wonders which of her 3 idiot brothers to visit. Didi's attempt to feed Calypso another sausage snaps her back to reality, prompting a small groan of defeat. When Didi tearfully worries that her cooking was bad, Calypso frantically waves her hands to reassure her otherwise. Normalcy returns as Calypso happily resumes eating, prompting delighted claps and warm smiles from her maids. The scene shifts to the Grand Palace grounds, bathed in bright, tranquil sunlight. The maids wave goodbye, cheerfully promising to bring even more delicious food for their lunch date tomorrow. Waving farewell, Calypso resolves to investigate what her brothers are up to and prepare her strategy in advance. A clear, brilliant blue sky marks the passage of time as her new mission begins. The grand, ornate building of the education institution looms ahead under the bright morning sun. Peeking through the lush green bushes, Calypso navigates the path leading toward the prestigious educational institution. Calypso creeps forward stealthily, determined to avoid being spotted by anyone to keep her stealth mission hassle-free. A harsh, loud shout suddenly echoes nearby, instantly putting the sneaking toddler on high alert. Peeking through the leaves, Calypso spots a group of arrogant students shouting aggressively at a quiet boy. The bullies mock the boy's silence, cruelly asking if he is ignoring them or simply too stupid to understand. A system profile identifies the silver-haired, blue-eyed victim of the bullying as Agenor Aquacide, Calypso's third older brother. Calypso stares in absolute shock, highly confused as to why her formidable brother is being bullied. Agenor huddles on the ground, trembling visibly in apparent fear and weakness before his tormentors. The bullies continue their verbal abuse, mocking his silver hair color and demanding to know why he is in their class. Agenor desperately begs them to stop as the bullies burst into cruel, mocking laughter. The bullies laughingly compare his soft, trembling voice to that of a pathetic goat beast. A sudden spark of memory flashes in Calypso's mind as she recalls a crucial piece of information. She remembers a story about Agenor's reputation during his time at the educational institution. She vividly recalls a servant's warning that her brother was actually a massive masochist who thoroughly enjoyed being bullied. One of the boys violently grabs Agenor's collar, demanding to know why he remains silent while Agenor blushes deeply. A puddle of water begins to swirl around Agenor's shoe, hinting at a terrifying lethal power. Beneath his submissive facade, Agenor prepares to unleash his deadly water power, forcing a panicked Calypso to intervene before he kills them. Watching from the bushes, Calypso realizes that this situation could be a very big deal. The red-haired bully angrily demands an answer from the silver-haired boy while a warning sounds. The red-haired bully suddenly freezes in place, halting his attack on the silver-haired boy. The bullies stare in complete surprise as a sudden presence halts their aggressive confrontation. Calypso steps forward confidently and firmly commands the group of bullies to stop their behavior. The red-haired bully demands to know why a mere kid is trying to interfere. The slick-haired bully points out Calypso's unique hair, causing his red-haired friend to ask what is wrong with it. The red-haired bully finally realizes the significance of her hair and mutters in surprise. A system window explains that her hair characteristics identify her as a direct descendant of the family. Suspecting she is Pierre's rumored daughter, the bullies decide to retreat to avoid any future trouble. The silver-haired boy clutches his chest in utter surprise as his tormentors prepare to leave. As the bullies walk away, one of them grudgingly warns the boy to consider himself lucky. Calypso proudly crosses her arms, smugly dismissing the retreating bullies as nothing but cowards. The boy coldly asks Calypso why she is bothering him after her sudden intervention. A gentle touch reveals his true dark hair with its distinctive white streaks underneath. Revealing his true hair, the boy defensively asks Calypso why she keeps bothering him. A future memory shows him admitting he would have been embarrassed by his past foolish actions. He expresses deep regret, wishing they had been able to meet much earlier in their lives. Calypso tells Agenor Aquacide to step forward, confidently identifying him as her older brother. Agenor looks at her with utter confusion, asking what on earth she is talking about. Calypso is disappointed that her cute greeting did not move him emotionally like she imagined. Agenor bluntly tells Calypso to stop bothering him and to leave the area immediately. Calypso calls out to his retreating back, demanding to know if he will greet her. Agenor is highly annoyed, questioning why he should have any obligation to greet her. Calypso points directly at him, declaring she knows he was secretly planning to kill him. Calypso warns him that attempting murder would get him expelled from the family, regardless of bloodline. Agenor scoffs and looks away defensively, clearly annoyed by her sharp accusation. Agenor mutters that he would have been fine even if she had not intervened. Calypso suddenly dashes forward with incredible speed, taking her brother completely by surprise. Calypso winds up a massive punch, leaving her brother completely stunned by her sudden attack. Calypso delivers a powerful physical strike, easily catching her older brother off guard. Agenor screams in absolute shock and pain as he clutches his heavily throbbing head. Calypso cheerfully declares that a physical lesson is the best way to wake him up. Calypso credits her dad's teachings for her strength, leaving her father thoroughly confused. Agenor groans in pain, desperately demanding to know where she got such monstrous strength. Calypso proudly reflects on her incredible power, welcoming her inner Super Munchkin persona back. Calypso proudly states she is just a cute younger sister who happens to be much stronger. Blushing deeply, Agenor tries to dismiss her words, telling her not to make him laugh. Calypso suddenly grabs his shirt collar with a brilliant smile, shocking him once again. Calypso leans in close to her bewildered brother, innocently asking if he has ever done laundry. Agenor shrieks in pure terror as his little sister violently tosses him through the air. Calypso casually explains that laundry gets cleaner the more you beat the dirt out of it. Agenor weakly asks from the ground if she plans to keep attacking him like this. Calypso cheerfully continues her relentless beating, ignoring her brother's weak cries of pain. Calypso warns him that his water magic is completely useless against her superior physical strength. Clenching his fist, Agenor demands to know if she took some strange medicine to get so strong. Calypso taunts him, asking if he hasn't heard of his sister and calling him the weak sibling. Calypso silently resolves that her brothers must become much stronger during this current lifetime. She must prevent the original male lead from unleashing another devastating rampage as the Dragon Duke. Calypso resolves that they desperately need someone capable of stopping him well in advance. Calypso determines that her brothers must grow strong enough to conquer the original male lead, deciding she will personally train them. Observing Agenor's fierce, defensive gaze, Calypso silently notes that he looks ready to strike back at any second. Calypso contemplates using a specific training method, drawing inspiration from her formidable father. Calypso commands her brother to call her his younger sister, but Agenor stubbornly refuses. Calypso suddenly leans in close, asking him if he has any desire to become stronger. Calypso boasts about her incredible power, leaving her brother humbled on the ground. Calypso offers to reveal her secret to gaining strength, causing Agenor to sigh in defeat. Agenor finally gives in, hesitantly asking his younger sister how he can achieve such great power. Calypso proudly realizes the family blood runs deep in him, eagerly preparing to share her training secrets. Calypso demands absolute obedience once she shares her secrets, which immediately prompts Agenor's panicked refusal. Calypso casually threatens to take her training secrets to their second brother Atlan instead. Desperate to not be left behind, Agenor frantically changes his mind and agrees to do it. Calypso asks for his final agreement, and Agenor reluctantly accepts as he reaches out to her. The narrative reveals that Agenor's past school misbehavior actually stemmed from classmates insulting his mother, which went ignored. Reports indicate that Agenor suffered a serious accident shortly after that unfair school incident. Calypso strictly forbids Agenor from fighting, killing, destroying evidence, or burying his tormentors. Calypso seals their agreement with a firm and enthusiastic declaration. Calypso establishes that he can do as he wishes only after he manages to defeat her in combat. The siblings seal their binding training contract with a traditional pinky prowess. Calypso proudly introduces Agenor to their father, who responds with a cool, unimpressed query. Pierre dismisses the training arrangement as utter nonsense, stating he has no use for it. Pierre demands his return, but softens in surprise upon learning Calypso successfully defeated her brother. Calypso asks if she can keep her newly won subordinate close by since she has no other use for him. Pierre observes that the boy is completely isolated, drawing a quiet comparison to himself. Pierre lets out a soft, resigned sigh as he contemplates his daughter's unusual request. Pierre finally yields, giving Calypso full permission to do whatever she wants since he cannot stop her. As he walks away, Pierre silently admits he still cannot figure out his bizarre daughter. Pierre observes his third son, who has obediently followed his sister's lead. Pierre reflects on his daughter, noting she cleverly feigns ignorance despite knowing much more than she lets on. Pierre wonders what strange thoughts are running through the minds of his unusual children. The scene shifts to a magnificent glass house surrounded by lush branches bearing ripe yellow lemons. Two bright-eyed blonde twin boys in green outfits wave cheerfully with sparkling smiles. The energetic twin boys eagerly invite the princess to a lavish lunch they prepared for her. The table is piled high with sweet delicacies, making the princess wonder if they can possibly finish it all. The twins excitedly pass along their father's invitation for the princess to visit their home for more food. A mouth-watering plate of fresh fruit crepes is placed gently onto the picnic blanket. The twins secretly conspire to ask their father to prepare a special mysterious dish for her. With plans made, the children happily resume eating their delicious outdoor lunch. The sun shines down brightly over the majestic structures of the sprawling estate grounds. Calypso is presented with the sealed letter that her brother successfully secured from their father. Calypso expresses her sincere gratitude, absolutely thrilled to receive the highly anticipated document. Spotting their father nearby, the twins bid the princess a warm and safe farewell. Calypso suddenly gasps in surprise, her attention captured by someone approaching. The twins joyfully run up to greet their elegant white-suited father as he enters the grand hall. The handsome blonde-haired man looks down with a warm, gentle smile at his twin sons. Calypso is utterly struck by the uncanny physical resemblance between the twins and their father. She recalls that in her past life, the twins tragically went missing long before she took over. The narration explains that the Orca family traditionally follows a strict matriarchal succession rule. However, the formidable matriarch declares she will select the most capable grandchild regardless of gender. Three sinister shadowy figures loom in the darkness with glowing red eyes hinting at hidden threats. A text box explains that the matriarch's decision brings unexpected hope to the marginalized grandchildren. Narration introduces one of the strongest candidates poised to seize control of the family succession. She begins recalling Uncle Vian's cruel eldest son and his past violent atrocities as she walks. A sudden, rough bump from behind causes Calypso to lose her balance and stumble forward. The blue-haired boy condescendingly turns around and rudely orders Calypso to walk properly. Calypso calmly advises the boy to refrain from picking fights if he cannot do it properly. Flustered and blushing with embarrassment, the boy stammers in disbelief at her blunt critique. The boy mocks her upright posture, but Calypso proudly defends her natural way of walking. The boy angrily taunts Calypso, predicting she will soon be kicked out of the family. Calypso innocently questions his threats, completely unbothered by his dramatic predictions of her expulsion. The boy warns her that she will deeply regret beating up Uncle Vian's loyal subordinates. Calypso suddenly realizes the connection, identifying the bullies she recently defeated as Vian's direct lackeys. Calypso cheerfully challenges him to go ahead and try to get her expelled, laughing mockingly. The boy clenches his fist in absolute fury, desperately trying to assert his serious threats. Calypso taunts him to run and report her actions, completely terrifying the flustered young boy. Driven to a frenzy, the boy suddenly dashes toward a rack of decorative wall swords. The boy reaches out and aggressively grabs a sword from the decorative display. The boy swings the weapon wildly at Calypso, screaming in a desperate attempt to strike. The boy lunges forward in a rage while Calypso prepares to counter his foolish attack. Calypso easily dodges his frantic sword swings, resolving to defend herself to avoid getting hurt. Calypso firmly plants her foot on the ground, preparing to launch a decisive physical counterstrike. Calypso leaps gracefully into the air, aiming a powerful flying kick directly at her attacker. Calypso delivers a brutal kick directly to his face, recalling her father's self-defense teachings. Calypso executes a perfect mid-air flip and lands back on her feet with absolute ease. With another swift kick, Calypso successfully disarms her opponent, sending his sword flying away. Calypso calmly catches her breath, silently noting to herself that the sudden attack was dangerous. The flying sword is suddenly caught mid-air, suspended safely inside a swirling stream of water. Layla, a dignified silver-haired woman, steps forward while effortlessly controlling the water-wrapped sword. Layla demands a strict explanation for the dangerous weapon brawl occurring in the hallway. Layla sternly lectures Karen, reminding him that decorative swords must never be wielded as weapons. Karen stammers in terror as Layla coldly orders him to the disciplinary room. Layla lectures Karen on the rules, emphasizing that using deadly weapons to cause bloodshed is strictly unacceptable. Calypso silently watches from a distance as a dejected Karen is led away. Calypso waves her hand with a bright smile, thanking Layla for her timely intervention. Layla politely dismisses the thanks, stating she was merely doing her duty as the head educator. Layla internally reminds herself of her responsibility to remain neutral and completely fair to everyone. Calypso beams with an adorable, sparkling smile as she enthusiastically thanks Layla once more. Layla freezes in sheer shock, completely disarmed by the young girl's overwhelming cuteness. Giggling playfully, Calypso skips along as she follows Layla down the corridor. Calypso wonders if she needs to undergo disciplinary interviews or write formal incident statements. Layla reassures the young princess that she is exempt from visiting the disciplinary room. Layla reveals that someone had personally requested her to take special care of Calypso. Calypso is struck with utter disbelief upon learning that her father made the request. Calypso runs around in frantic circles, her mind completely racing from the shocking news. Overwhelmed with sheer panic, Calypso despairs as she frantically wonders what she should do. A heavy silence falls as Layla reveals her profound personal debt to Pierre. Layla warmly confesses that she is also one of Pierre's loyal and dedicated followers. Calypso is completely mind-blown to discover the head educator is actually her father's subordinate. Standing before the massive doors, Calypso nervously wonders what secrets her father is hiding. Terrified of his reaction, Calypso fears her father will discover her secrets and turn hostile. Sensing the truth, Calypso contemplates whether she should finally stop pretending and playing along. Before making her move, she decides she must first go face-to-face to meet him. Calypso cautiously peeks through the door, preparing herself for the upcoming confrontation. Pierre walks gracefully through the elegant, blue-lit room, unaware of his daughter's presence. Calypso playfully asks Pierre if he is currently in need of a second disciple. Pierre knew she was lying, making her ongoing deception feel like a deep betrayal. Calypso cheerfully introduces her nervous brother to her silent, observing father. At that exact moment, Pierre's willingness to keep playing along completely vanished. Pierre considers ending their pretend relationship, but Calypso suddenly cheers about her victory. Despite his serious doubts, Pierre admits to himself that he simply could not do it. Pierre and Calypso stand connected by a mysterious glowing blue thread of fate. For the very first time, Pierre tightly clenches his fist in silent contemplation. A sudden quiet knocking sound draws Pierre's attention as he stands in his room. Calypso opens the door with a bright smile, warmly greeting her father as master. Pierre stares down silently at his cheerful daughter, his expression remaining completely unreadable. Pierre quietly averts his gaze, lost in his own complex thoughts about his daughter. Calypso feels a sudden wave of nervousness under her father's silent, heavy gaze. Pierre ignores her dramatic, tearful antics, keeping his back turned to her quiet distress. Pierre turns around and questions his daughter about the papers she is holding. Calypso proudly presents a special letter she brought specifically for her master. Calypso eagerly asks if Pierre is excited, but he calmly dismisses her enthusiasm. Calypso hopes her father's normal reaction means her plan is proceeding safely. Calypso notices Pierre seems unready to address the elephant in the room just yet. Calypso suddenly panics upon realizing that she must be the one to initiate conversation. Calypso reveals she obtained a special recipe from the twins to cook for him. Pierre is utterly bewildered by the unexpected mention of his young daughter's cooking. Pierre sits in quiet solitude at the massive dining table waiting for her food. Pierre looks up as Calypso excitedly calls out to him from the doorway. Calypso proudly brings in a covered silver platter, announcing her dish is finally done. Calypso places the dish down, boasting of its nutritional balance despite some help. With a mischievous grin, Calypso prepares to reveal her mysterious culinary creation. Calypso proudly presents a bizarre screaming purple dish that leaves the chef crying. Pierre dryly notes her dedication to nutrition as Calypso boasts about her special recipe. Calypso admits the meal is meant as a heartfelt apology for her recent actions. She apologizes for pushily asking to be his disciple and bringing her brother along. Calypso nervously twiddles her bandaged fingers, admitting she was far too pushy. Calypso slumps her shoulders in deep regret, looking incredibly dejected and apologetic. Pierre silently observes her from across the table, his sharp gaze fixed on her. Calypso fondly recalls a happier past memory of greeting her father with a smile. Calypso looks up with adorable pouty eyes, hoping for her father's forgiveness. Pierre lets out a soft, resigned sigh as he closes his eyes in exasperation. Pierre asks for an explanation of the bizarre dish served before him. Calypso eagerly begins explaining the special beluga family recipe behind her strange creation. Pierre effortlessly channels his water magic, preparing to taste his daughter's unusual dish. Gentle water magic wraps around Calypso's hands, soothing her cuts and bruises. Calypso looks up with sparkling eyes, eagerly asking her master how he likes it. Pierre bluntly rejects her culinary efforts, leaving Calypso completely stunned and speechless. Calypso quickly apologizes to Pierre after his blunt rejection of her special dish. Pierre warns her never to repeat the mistake, and she eagerly promises to obey. Calypso hesitantly asks her master if she can finally pose her important question now. Calypso mentally notes that something strange happened at her education institution today as Pierre cuts his meat. Calypso wonders why her father ordered Layla to protect her. Pierre silently stares down at his plate, his face shadowed with a cold, unreadable expression. Pierre boasts about defeating a 14-year-old at her age, prompting a sarcastic reaction from Calypso. Calypso continues to question the hidden meaning behind her father's protective order to Layla. Calypso sits quietly at the massive dining table, observing her silent master from across the room. Pierre narrows his sharp blue eyes, lost in deep, mysterious thoughts of his own. Calypso nervously asks her master for his thoughts, hoping to gauge his true reaction. Calypso resolves to ask him directly, recalling how indifference to the Dragon Duke led to the world's end. Calypso mentally declares her hatred for unresolved uncertainties, stealing her resolve to find answers. Pierre casually dismisses her query, questioning why she is asking for his opinion at all. Pierre coldly reminds her that he is not even her father, leaving Calypso completely stunned. Calypso clenches her fist, finally realizing the true nature of his cold stance. Calypso wonders when he realized she was lying and why he still chose to help her. As Pierre comments on his overcooked steak, Calypso decides to play along to keep things natural. Calypso argues that since her master and father are similar in age, she hoped he would understand. Calypso nervously wonders what to do if he has already seen through her act. Calypso struggles to understand why her master chose to remain completely silent about her secrets. Pierre softly remarks that not all adults are the same, averting his gaze from her. A heavy, quiet silence falls over the dining table as Pierre continues to eat calmly. Calypso silently grumbles that her master simply refuses to discuss the matter, calling it unfair. A sudden, comical munching sound echoes as Calypso aggressively stuffs her face with food. His hand quickly sets down 3 shiny silver forks onto the pristine white table. A sudden, sharp clack sounds as Calypso freezes mid-bite, staring at her master in surprise. Calypso wonders why her father couldn't just directly tell her that he loves her very much. Pierre warmly smiles as he concludes that his silence itself must be the final answer. Calypso blinks in absolute disbelief, her mind completely blank from her master's unexpected response. Calypso looks down in sheer amazement, realizing that the scar on her hand has completely vanished. Calypso happily clasps her healed hands together, her face glowing with pure, unadulterated joy. Calypso smiles with overwhelming gratitude, her sparkling blue eyes filled with newfound affection for her master. Agenor stands completely frozen in absolute shock, staring wide-eyed at the unbelievable scene unfolding. Agenor sweat drops in utter confusion, mentally questioning what on earth he is currently witnessing. Flashback shows Calypso lifting a massive boulder during training while Pierre strictly commands her to use her legs. Agenor is utterly horrified to see a 3-year-old lift a massive boulder over 300 times. Agenor finally realizes that Calypso is utilizing powerful water magic to bolster her physical strength. During the brutal training session, Agenor watches and concludes that his defeat by Calypso was entirely inevitable. Narration introduces Pierre's third son, Agenor, who was widely recognized as a genius since childhood. Despite his natural genius, Agenor felt unsatisfied, desiring to test his limits against the absolute best. However, as his legendary strength became widely known, his daily life began to change. To his deep disappointment, absolutely nobody dared to challenge or fight him anymore. Agenor tightly clenches his fist in silent frustration, desperately craving a worthy opponent to fight. Agenor changed his strategy by intentionally provoking bullies just so he could defeat them one by one. Fighting and defeating the strongest opponents became Agenor's sole source of twisted pleasure. His monotonous life was suddenly disrupted when his bizarre younger sister made her dramatic appearance. Agenor was utterly dumbfounded to see his younger sister calling their own father her martial arts master. Despite her loud complaints of unfairness, it was clear their father was deeply invested in training her. Staring at his sister, there was absolutely no doubt left in Agenor's mind. Agenor mentally proclaims with absolute certainty that his sister is his true, long-awaited savior. Agenor's face lights up with absolute joy as he looks at her with sparkling eyes. Despite his creed to destroy the strong, Agenor eagerly wonders what if she is completely unbreakable. Agenor realizes he has no choice but to comply with his father's training demands. Sweat dripping down his face, Agenor frantically admits to himself that this intense training is far too extreme. Pierre casually looks over at his son, instructing Agenor that it is his turn to train next. Pierre stands silently as Agenor stares back at him in complete bewilderment. Agenor enthusiastically requests a much smaller rock to lift compared to the massive boulder Calypso had. Pierre stares down in silence as a completely exhausted Calypso slumps under her heavy boulder. Pierre questions his son's pride for wanting a smaller rock, which Agenor easily dismisses without shame. Agenor happily pledges to his master that he will become stronger within his own realistic limits. Agenor looks down at his sister struggling under the heavy boulder, hoping she might grant his request. Calypso slumps flat on the ground in utter exhaustion, breathing heavily from her intense training. Agenor spots a glass of ice water and a clean towel sitting nearby on a stone ledge. A sudden sharp click of fingers echoes through the air as Agenor prepares to use his magic. Streams of gentle water magic lift the cold glass of ice water and the towel into the air. Agenor cheerfully presents the cool water and towel to his completely bewildered younger sister. Calypso sweat drops in utter confusion, internally questioning if her older brother has completely lost his mind. Agenor smiles with glittering, starry eyes, making Calypso highly suspicious of his strange behavior. Agenor heaps praises on his sister's incredible strength, leaving her feeling deeply skeptical of his flattery. Clasping his hands together, Agenor eagerly asks his sister to grant him one special request. Calypso casually wipes her face with the towel, warily telling her brother to state his request. Calypso internally recalls that she has two older brothers, including her second brother, Atlan. Agenor lowers his gaze, speaking in a solemn tone as he prepares to reveal his true intentions. Agenor begs his sister to subject his second older brother to the same brutal martial arts training. Calypso spits out her water in absolute shock, her blue eyes wide with sheer disbelief. Agenor warns her that their hot-tempered second brother, Atlan, stands absolutely no chance against her formidable strength. Agenor cheerfully schemes to drag Atlan into this brutal training so he won't suffer alone. Agenor gleefully runs away, laughing hysterically while a stunned Calypso watches him from the bench. Agenor happily hopes that Atlan will be pushed to a point where recovery is completely impossible. Calypso taps her chin in deep thought, carefully considering her brother's highly chaotic request. Calypso turns her attention toward her second older brother, Atlan, a dark-haired boy with piercing red eyes. Calypso recalls that Atlan has a mischievous streak and likely clashed with Bayon due to their competitive temperaments. Calypso remembers that in her previous life, she and her brothers were incredibly reliable comrades in battle. Calypso recalls their deep camaraderie, especially during the most critical and life-threatening moments of their past. Calypso remembers her past self desperately pleading for her brother to survive as chaos erupted around them. Calypso reflects on her brother's deep love, which was strong enough to sacrifice his very life for hers. Calypso reminds herself that her current second life can never be the same as her tragic past. Calypso casually drinks juice, deciding to put aside her brother's crazy talk since she won't meet Atlan soon. The cheerful blonde twin brothers suddenly appear, eagerly asking the young lady what she is doing there. The twins instantly shout in unison, vehemently denying that they get along with each other. The blonde twins bicker loudly over who is the elder brother, completely confusing Calypso. Calypso gently pokes the arguing twins, telling them to calm down and stop bickering. One of the twins notes that Lady Charon has also failed to show up at school. Calypso realizes with concern that Charon has indeed been absent for several consecutive days. The students discuss how Charon's absence has caused a strange, divided atmosphere among the camps. Calypso observes the divided students, wondering what criteria caused such a sharp rift between them. Layla quietly approaches, calling out to her young lady amidst the beautiful yellow flowers. Layla asks her lady if she is planning to depart from the academy now. Calypso agrees and asks if Layla needs anything, prompting Layla to ask her to step closer. Layla reminds her of the upcoming family council, which Calypso plans to attend as a candidate. Layla warns her to be careful, pointing out that previous prospective candidates have mysteriously disappeared. Calypso confidently reassures Layla that her father and Layla will protect her from any danger. Layla gently smiles as she agrees with her young lady's assessment. Narration notes the deep, unresolved division within the massive family. Calypso turns her back, calmly stating that she will keep that advice in mind. Clutching her hand, Calypso resolvedly prepares herself mentally for the upcoming family council. Narration highlights her growing concern over the divided atmosphere among the students. Agenor suddenly points up in surprise as he spots his younger sister. Calypso questions Agenor's sudden presence, but he cheerfully declares they should meet their father together. Agenor expresses surprise over her arrival on horseback, while Chibi Calypso grumbles at the nuisance. Agenor leans in, scheming to defeat her current followers so he can become her primary supporter. Calypso glares intensely, silently warning that any pests in her way will be thoroughly crushed. Calypso scolds him for lacking a conscience, while Agenor shamelessly clings to her sleeve. Calypso ponders how the other students will naturally align with the main family heirs. Agenor confirms the divided atmosphere and questions how she plans to handle the upcoming council. Agenor reassures Calypso by offering to personally introduce her to the family. Calypso reflects on his offer, wishing her father could do it instead, despite knowing it is impossible. Calypso stands with her arms folded, mentally preparing herself for the trials ahead. Agenor explains the complex political factions, noting his previous encounters with their older brothers. Agenor softly confesses that he had never paid much attention to her before. Agenor beams warmly amid roses, asking if she wants him to spoil her. A soft chuckle slips out as Calypso smirks at his surprisingly affectionate attitude. Calypso chibi pins Agenor down, ordering him not to get ahead of himself as he pleads for mercy. Time passes in a blur as a new day dawns over the Academy's massive white towers. Calypso looks down at a mysterious letter, noting her temporary peace has come to an end. The anonymous letter commands her to go to the backyard, threatening the blonde twins if she refuses. Calypso crumbles the paper, dismissing the threat as a cliché line from a cheap villain. Calypso resolutely walks toward the backyard to confront the sender face to face. Calypso approaches the backyard shed, accepting the challenge as she prepares to enter. An arrogant young man with blue eyes and black hair mocks her, comparing her to a worthless dog. Calypso fumes over the petty insult, unleashing a dark, menacing aura that terrifies the nearby thugs. Black-haired young man insultingly retorts that her intelligence is inferior to a jellyfish's. Smirking arrogantly, the young man admits that the rumors about her have piqued his curiosity. A gentle tap sounds on her head as the young man mockingly questions why their grandmother would favor her. Calypso glares back with absolute fury at his continuous disrespect. A sudden, tight grip clinches his wrist as Calypso stops his hand in its tracks. A quick, sharp yank frees his arm as he recoils from her incredible strength and shock. Glaring coldly, Calypso retorts that their grandmother's favor was earned through genuine skill, calling him an idiot. Calypso activates her glowing blue water magic, demanding the immediate release of the twins. Calypso threatens him with full responsibility, while the young man mockingly comments on her father's reputation. A background kid nervously points out that her father is the legendary Pierre. The young man condescendingly asks if she is simply a child relying entirely on her father's name. He boastfully claims that he's the one who truly inherited their father's immense talents. Calypso suddenly commands the bound blonde twins, Ruga and Ruba, to unleash their voices. The arrogant young man gasps in sudden alarm, realizing she has laid a trap. Tied securely, one of the blonde twins grits his teeth, gathering immense energy. Narration explains that every distinct magical power possesses its own unique internal harmony. Narration describes how various marine-based entities evolved specialized physical weapons for survival. The blonde twins unleash an agonizing ultrasonic scream, leaving the surrounding guards clutching their ears in pain. Calypso orders Agenor to rescue the twins, and he swiftly charges forward to comply. The arrogant young man clutches his head in agony, completely disoriented by the deafening sound. A powerful strike slams directly into his chest, delivering a decisive blow. Calypso declares herself as his true opponent as she prepares to launch a powerful strike. Her fist connects forcefully with his chin, sending him reeling backward from the sheer impact. Calypso lands smoothly as her opponent staggers back, completely thrown off balance. He wipes blood from his mouth, staring down in absolute silence after the brutal blow. Glaring with rising fury, the young man insults her as nothing more than a worm. Calypso mockingly asks how it feels to be thoroughly bested by such insignificant opponents. Calypso urgently commands Agenor to prioritize protecting the blonde twins at all costs. Hearing an offer of assistance, she confidently accepts without a single moment of hesitation. Calypso proudly boasts of her capabilities as she readies herself for the next round. Agenor prepares his magic with a sharp, crisp snap of his fingers. The remaining thugs look on in absolute bewilderment as their comrades begin to collapse. Calypso stares them down with cold contempt, labeling them as nothing but cowards. The backyard erupts into chaos as blows are traded in a frantic struggle. Aeginer questions if this one-sided beatdown can even be considered a proper battle. Narration explains that direct confrontations between orcas are normally majestic, water-fueled magic duels. Aeginer's sweat drops as Calypso resorts to a chaotic, brutal street brawl of biting and hair-pulling. Calypso casually adjusts her hair, completely unfazed by the messy physical struggle. Bayan frantically orders his men to suppress her using their water magic. Aeginer is deeply shaken by her display of overwhelming strength despite being unawakened. Aeginer excitedly realizes that her raw combat potential far surpasses even their eldest brother. Calypso relentlessly slams the remaining attackers onto the hard ground with ease. Realizing his defeat, Bayan desperately searches for a way to regain control. He cowardly commands his men to seize the blonde twins to use as leverage once more. A sudden muffled scream echoes as one of the children is snatched away. The guards collapse to the ground in agony, clutching their ears from the residual damage. An ally arrives on the scene, explaining that he rushed over immediately upon receiving Aeginor's distress message. Blonde man stares in absolute disbelief at the chaotic aftermath of the battle. One of the blonde twins tearfully runs into the arms of his worried father. The boy frantically begs his unconscious brother to open his eyes as he sobs over him. Aeginer nervously tries to calm everyone down and explain the complex situation. Calypso realizes that the chaotic incident is finally drawing to an end. Calypso notes their proximity to the academy building, knowing the massive commotion must have alerted authority figures. A booming voice commands everyone to immediately cease all actions. The stern, silver-haired administrator demands an immediate explanation for the backyard brawl. Calypso flashes a subtle, devious smirk, knowing her plan is working perfectly. Bandaged and seated, Calypso requests a brief moment to calm herself before speaking. Calypso calmly sips her warm tea to project an air of fragile innocence. The administrator points out that Calypso's faction was clearly the victim of a premeditated assault. The blonde man highlights the cruelty of targeting innocent 7-year-old twin children. The administrator assures them that the Orcas will strictly protect the defenseless students. Calypso shifts the focus to the specific regulations regarding combat-specialized whale subspecies. Calypso slams her hand on the desk, emphasizing the strict academy regulations. She points out that advanced students are forbidden from harming those in the beginner division. Though it is an ancient, often ignored rule, getting caught violating it carries severe consequences. This specific rule remains highly sacred, instituted by the ancestral founders of the Orca family. The tense tea session continues as Calypso strategically lays out her legal argument. Formally introducing herself, Calypso officially demands the immediate convocation of a disciplinary committee. Calypso notes that Bayan underestimated their grandmother's absolute hatred for school rule violations. Calypso smugly thinks that one should never blindly pick a fight with a calculated time regressor. The administrator complies with her request, announcing that the highest disciplinary committee will officially convene. Calypso finds temporary relief in sitting down, confident that her next step will not be difficult. Camille informs Calypso that a guardian must accompany her to the highest disciplinary committee. Calypso reacts with complete shock and panic at the sudden requirement of bringing a guardian. Camille clarifies that Calypso must specifically bring her formidable father, Lord Pierre, to the meeting. Calypso is absolutely horrified, imagining her cold, terrifying father reacting with utter indifference to her request. A voice from outside the door suddenly prompts Calypso to go ahead and check it out. Standing before the massive double doors, Calypso lets out a heavy, incredibly exhausted sigh. Calypso reflects on her miscalculation, having only intended to summon the school's disciplinary committee. Calypso laments the unexpected development of her plan turning into a classic, dreaded parental summon. Calypso nervously debates how to explain defeating her rival Bayan to her cold and distant father. Calypso anxiously bites her nails as she practices asking Pierre to attend the disciplinary committee. Calypso deeply fears her father will simply refuse to acknowledge her as his daughter. The terrifying thought of her father's cold rejection sends Calypso into a state of absolute panic. Her anxious thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a polite voice calling out to her. A dignified blonde gentleman in a dark, elegant uniform offers a respectful bow to Calypso. Calypso stares back with curious, wide blue eyes, wondering about the polite stranger's identity. The gentle blonde-haired man introduces himself as Roba Valuga, father of the White Dolphin twins. Roba explains that his wife, the Valuga matriarch, has already taken their twin sons away. Roba expresses his gentle regret, admitting he might not have arrived at the courtyard on time. Roba notes that his young twin sons, Ruga and Ruba, were directly involved in his personal affairs. Calypso listens intently, her sparkling blue eyes fixed on the polite and sincere father. Roba highlights how powerful whales disregard morality, foolishly believing that raw physical strength solves everything. Roba sighs, taking full responsibility for involving his innocent twin sons in such dangerous wrongdoing. Calypso politely curtsies in response, showing her deep respect for the humble, apologetic father. Roba notes the lack of morality in whales, while Calypso finds his candid words painfully accurate. Roba smiles warmly, stating he is fully prepared to accept an apology to Bayon for the violence. Calypso finds great satisfaction in hearing him speak so frankly about the reality of their society. A dark reflection labels the noble Veluga family as truly pitiable beings in this harsh world. A memory reveals how the cruel Bayon ruthlessly threatened the twins to force their submission. Because they bravely refused his threats, the twins' relatives were tragically massacred without mercy. Calypso recalls that Robo was once celebrated as an exceptionally powerful and resilient warrior. Calypso realizes that Roba's family was the kind that would never align with Bayon's faction. Calypso expresses her deep gratitude and promises to visit the twin boys, Ruga and Ruba, soon. Roba offers a gentle, heartwarming smile, deeply touched by Calypso's kind and considerate nature. Excited whispers and rumors quickly spread among the students regarding Calypso's shocking victory over Bayon. Disbelieving students gossip, wondering how an unawakened young girl could defeat an advanced student. A smug, gray-haired student stands proudly nearby, thoroughly enjoying the dramatic rumors circulating around. The gray-haired boy summarizes that Calypso overwhelmingly defeated Bayon in their sudden showdown. The energetic gray-haired boy hops over to pester his quiet blue-haired classmate. The classmate glares with terrifying, glowing red eyes, threatening to kill him for waking him up. The boy points out that Calypso is actually Atlan's younger sister, identifying Calypso's second brother. Atlan rests his chin in his hand, looking incredibly annoyed by the reminder of his sibling. Atlan fiercely denies having a sister, violently grabbing his classmate to demand complete silence. The scene shifts to the Grand Sunlit Academy library, where students quietly study and research. A student holds a document whispering about the dramatic rumor surrounding the young lady. Two curious schoolgirls approach a quiet, black-haired student, addressing him by his name, Bellis. Bellis Aquaseadal, Calypso's quiet eldest brother, reads peacefully by the window, ignoring the girls. Bellis coldly states that if Calypso has committed an offense, she must be punished accordingly. Confused by his harsh reaction, the schoolgirls ask Bellis to explain her supposed crime further. Bellis firmly shuts his book, noting their strict grandmother dislikes rule breakers above all else. A dark blue circular thought bubble declares that Bayon is not the true problem here. Bellis Aquaseadal stares out the window, his expression cold and brooding in the dim light. A celebratory exclamation of victory echoes over the grand sunlit spires of the academy. Bandaged and bruised, the young Calypso jubilantly celebrates her hard-fought victory in the battle. Calypso walks behind her master, expressing deep gratitude for his excellent guidance in her training. Her master looks at the injured child, silently lamenting the sheer exhaustion of raising her. A sudden gasp sounds as Calypso flinches in surprise, turning to look back.
Calypso nervously wonders what is happening as her master glares at her with crossed arms.
Calypso nervously resolves to bring up the impending disciplinary committee meeting. Her master coldly defines real victory as defeating an opponent without taking any damage. Calypso asks how one can win without getting hurt, and her master replies that he has always done so. Calypso points out his mastery in her unawakened state, but her master sternly reminds her of her oath to obey him. Calypso desperately tries to argue her point despite her master's intimidating stance. Her master bluntly tells her that her injuries are due to a lack of ability. Calypso tearfully laments that she deserves a compliment instead of criticism given her young age. Calypso tearfully asserts that she is putting in more effort than anyone else. Calypso reflects on her desperate efforts to survive in both her past and present lives. Her master asks where she is going, and Calypso tearfully leaves, wishing her father were there instead. A warm memory of her past life shows her loving father hugging her gently as a child. Tears stream down Calypso's face as she softly whispers that she misses her father. Calypso weeps silently, reiterating how deeply she misses her father. Calypso walks away with heavy footsteps, while her master watches her departure from a distance. A sudden whoosh sounds as a swirl of water magic unexpectedly surrounds the startled Calypso. Her master controls a sphere of water, instructing Calypso that her body is a weapon. Calypso defiantly demands to know what that has to do with her current situation. A mysterious voice declares that her physical form remains the same despite everything. Calypso floats in the swirling water, looking completely bewildered by the sudden demonstration of magic. Her master stands tall beside her, calmly maintaining the swirling vortex of water around the young girl. A narration explains that a well-maintained weapon can be utilized for an entire lifetime. Her master turns his back, solemnly admitting that he failed to properly forge that weapon. Calypso gasps softly in realization at her master's sudden admission. A memory shows her master coughing violently, reflecting on his status as a revered force. Calypso wonders if her master truly views his own life as a complete failure. Narration notes that Pierre was constantly subjected to unwanted public attention throughout life. Narration explains that Pierre's frail physical condition brought him unwanted attention until his death. Adult Calypso looks back with deep, brilliant blue eyes, reflecting on her master's tragic legacy. Calypso contemplates the grand future her master could have achieved during his academy days. Her master quietly clenches his hand, processing his own regrets and physical limitations. Calypso wipes her eyes as water magic flows gently around her. Calypso tearfully asks if it is her fault she got hurt and if her victory is wrong.
In a flashback, an older Calypso desperately asks how she can achieve graceful victories.
Her master explains that without struggling, he could not possess the water powers she naturally commands. Her master notes that even if he gives her an answer, she is too stubborn to listen. He begins to walk away, his boots clicking softly against the stone floor of the academy. Her master points out that their bond involves separation, asking if she preferred to remain detached. Calypso quietly observes that her master's voice sounds incredibly bitter. A sudden hand reaches out, snatching Calypso's collar in a swift motion. Calypso cheekily asks her master if he was actually just worried about her safety. Her master asks how her father, who cherished her, would react in this exact situation. Calypso happily explains her father would scold her for causing worry and then hug her tight. Calypso asks her master to repeat a simple request after her just once. Calypso looks up expectantly, her blue eyes shining with quiet hope and anticipation. Pierre's bright blue eye glints softly, reflecting a subtle, quiet shift in his emotion. Pierre gently pats Calypso's head, quietly admitting that he was deeply worried about her. Calypso beams happily under his touch, admitting she limped all this way just for him. The bright morning sun illuminates the grand, towering spires of the prestigious academy. Agenor looks up in mild surprise, gesturing with a hand as he speaks. Agenor calmly confirms that the situation unfolded exactly as she had just described. Calypso laments that her chaotic tantrum prevented her from discussing the parental summon with Pierre. At the dining table, Calypso decides she has no choice but to abandon the idea of bringing their father. Calypso glares skeptically while eating, leaving Agenor completely baffled by her sudden intensity. Agenor voices his concern, pointing out that high-ranking disciplinary hearings strictly require parental attendance. Setting her fork down, Calypso insists they will manage alone because asking Pierre feels too awkward. Agenor suggests informing their father, but Calypso vehemently declines, insisting the timing is still wrong. Calypso internally resolves to keep the secret safe until they finally access the Duke's workshop. Calypso strains under her training, desperately wishing she can continue living peacefully with Pierre. Agenor offers a warm, endearing smile, showing his deep affection and support for her. Calypso notes her surprise that the disciplinary committee and family council meetings coincide, which Agenor confirms. Calypso reflects on how her presence would attract unwanted rumors, resolving to settle things since Bayon is absent. Calypso gratefully acknowledges that managing Bayon's hostile faction would have been nearly impossible without Agenor's help. Agenor expresses his heartfelt gratitude to Calypso for helping him without demanding any explanation. Agenor happily explains that he found the experience fun, marking his first time protecting someone in battle. Calypso lets out a soft, amused giggle, thoroughly charmed by her brother's earnest response. Agenor proudly parrots her words, making Calypso nervously wonder if she has started a strange cult. A hand gracefully pours fresh tea into a cup, accompanied by a quiet exclamation. Maids gush over how wonderfully the young siblings get along with each other. The doting maids squeal in excitement, showering the utterly frozen young master with compliments about his handsome looks. Agenor is startled when Calypso suddenly appears, reminding her they must discuss tomorrow's disciplinary meeting. Calypso politely but firmly dismisses the maids, telling the Herring sisters they may leave now. The two maids offer a respectful bow before quietly stepping out of the room. Calypso prepares to outline her detailed plan, instructing Agenor to follow her words precisely. Calypso carefully details her strategic plan to Agenor, who listens intently across the table. Agenor readily agrees to her instructions, promising to follow her lead exactly as requested. Calypso confidently plots their victory, leaving Agenor sweating despite his absolute trust in her. The scene shifts to the next morning as the carriage arrives for the Supreme Council. Calypso steps out of the carriage, revealing her pristine, neatly tailored academy uniform. A dramatic announcement declares the official commencement of the highly anticipated Supreme Council meeting. The tension rises as the grand gates prepare to open for the Supreme Council. Calypso squirmingly complains about how incredibly stiff and awkward her formal suit feels on her. In a flashback, the enthusiastic maids aggressively measure and tailor a suit for a reluctant Calypso. Calypso softens, admitting that she can feel their sincerity and the outfit isn't bad. The maids proudly explain to her that clothes are just like words and serve as weapons. Calypso is suddenly reminded of Pierre's stern teaching that her own body is her ultimate weapon. Calypso quietly adjusts her dark tie, mentally preparing herself for the upcoming confrontation. A maid politely guides Calypso forward, and she quickly follows without any hesitation. Calypso feels relieved they avoided summoning parents, reflecting on Pierre's desire to keep things professional. Calypso resolutely walks up the stairs, reminding herself that she is fully capable of handling challenges alone. With a heavy thud, the grand wooden doors swing open to reveal the bright hall. Onlookers gasp in sheer disbelief as they witness Calypso's dramatic and confident entrance. Calypso stands poised and radiant, her striking blue eyes exuding supreme confidence and poise. Onlookers in the crowd are instantly captivated, blushing at Calypso's remarkably poised and stunning entrance. As Calypso walks forward, whispers erupt suggesting her incredible poise is due to Pierre's blood. Calypso observes that the attendance is low due to conflicts with the family council meeting. Calypso suspects the suspicious schedule alignment is intentional, wondering if Layla made a mistake before a voice suddenly calls out to her. Layla stands elegantly, her calm and professional demeanor commanding immediate attention from everyone in the hall. Approaching Calypso, Layla kindly remarks that the young girl looks remarkably different from usual today. Calypso beams with innocent charm, waving cheerfully in response to the warm greeting she received. Layla responds with a gentle, approving smile, thoroughly charmed by the young girl's adorable behavior. Layla directs Calypso to take her seat next to her brother, Agenor, who waves enthusiastically. Layla internally compares Calypso's dazzling beauty to Pierre's, wondering if she inherited it from her late mother. The crowd whispers in surprise, questioning rumors of the siblings' bad relationship after witnessing their warm greeting. Spectators realize the rumors about Pierre's children constantly fighting with one another are completely false. Calypso quietly turns her gaze toward the other side of the room with a focused expression. Calypso notices Baon glaring at her and confirms her suspicion that their grandfather did not attend. Calypso cheekily mocks the hostile glares, mentally asking the rascal where he thinks he is looking. Calypso realizes their grandmother came in their grandfather's place while he manages the family council's affairs. Staring at her grandmother, Calypso internally complains about how incredibly awkward the situation feels to her. Calypso reflects that from her grandfather's perspective, the true power lies with her grandmother's side. The family strongly believes a capable indirect descendant is far better than an incompetent direct heir. Layla raises her voice, politely calling for silence to formally begin the disciplinary committee meeting. The official announcement signals the formal start of the highly anticipated Supreme Disciplinary Committee meeting. Calypso sits in silence, mentally bracing herself with a focused and deeply serious expression. Layla commands everyone to swear by the sea to speak only the absolute truth during proceedings. Glaring across the room, Baon casually recites the formal oath, swearing by the sea. Agenor stands next to his sister, earnestly reciting the sacred oath to speak only the truth. A sudden, authoritative voice echoes through the silent chamber, commanding everyone to halt immediately. Chaya, the committee's formidable chairperson, interrupts the proceedings to put forward a surprising new proposal. Chaya explains that since the meeting concerns a minor, their guardians must be notified in advance. Chaya questions the total absence of parental guardians, catching the young siblings completely off guard. Chaya wonders if Lila purposely planned to overlook the standard rule requiring parental attendance. Calypso notes that Chaya is her grandfather's longtime friend and a strict advocate of rules. Calypso confidently asserts that guardians are a legal necessity meant only for immature individuals. Calypso declares she and Agenor are mature enough to act as their own advocates. The crowd whispers in confusion, questioning if her bold proposal violates the established school laws. Chaya stands firm, refusing to yield to the young girl's unconventional and daring defense. Slamming his fist, Chaya furiously insists they cannot proceed with anyone who ignores basic rules. Chaya issues a harsh and final ultimatum demanding that Calypso summon her guardian immediately. Agenor panics as Calypso realizes her grandfather's longtime friend will offer them no leniency today. Baon smirks maliciously, mockingly suggesting they proceed since she claims she has no father present. Chaya immediately silences the laughing crowd, remaining strictly focused on the lack of parental guardians. Calypso tightly clutches her dress, desperately trying to maintain her composure amidst the growing chaos. Agenor intensely focuses, telling himself to think carefully to resolve this highly tense situation. They desperately search for any viable loophole to turn this highly critical situation around. Calypso suddenly turns her head in absolute shock as an unexpected disturbance fills the hall. A booming voice echoes from the entrance, agreeing that the law must indeed be obeyed. The speaker dramatically steps forward, identifying himself as the guardian of his son and daughter. The Duke makes a magnificent entrance, grandly announcing that their guardian is present right now. Calypso stares in utter disbelief, completely baffled by her father's sudden and dramatic appearance. Calypso internally panics, noting this is the most shock she has felt in 4 lifetimes. Agenor is left entirely speechless, unable to process this completely unexpected turn of events. Calypso internally struggles to comprehend her father's sudden arrival, resolving not to show her flustered state. Reflecting on past rumors of paternal affection, Calypso realizes she cannot easily deny them. Agenor stands completely stunned as the sudden arrival of their guardian derails their initial plan. Calypso forces a bright, theatrical smile and enthusiastically calls out to her father. She desperately runs forward, silently pleading for her father to play along with her act. Calypso leaps dramatically through the air, launching herself directly at her silent, stone-faced father. Calypso tightly clings to her father's chest, nervously hoping he will support her public act. Carrying his daughter, the dark-haired Duke apologizes to the crowd for his late arrival. Calypso quietly asks her father if he is all right, still surprised by his presence. Calypso looks up in shock, reminding him she thought he was not going to make it. Calypso frantically urges her father in her mind to speak up and agree with her. While she wonders if silence is better, the Duke gently pats her head and answers that he is feeling better now. The committee chairperson and the gray-haired grandmother look on in absolute shock at the scene. Pierre asks if they need to confirm his attendance separately, to which the chairperson quickly declines. The grandmother hesitantly greets Pierre, admitting they assumed he would not be attending today's meeting. Pierre casually explains that his daughter was simply too worried to inform him of the meeting time. Calypso stares at her father in disbelief, amazed that he can speak so normally and fluently. Aeon furiously protests, claiming the arrival should not count since the Duke did not show up on time. Chairperson Chaya firmly tells Bayon to refrain from unnecessary disturbances since the attendance has been officially acknowledged. As Bayon prepares to unleash his magic, his grandmother commands him to calm down immediately. The grandmother firmly places her hand on Bayon's shoulder, instantly silencing his building anger. The grandmother coldly reminds Bayon that the chairman have already officially acknowledged the Duke's attendance. Calypso internally mocks Bayon's childish tantrum, noting that such behavior will not help his case. Calypso reflects that Bayon's punishment is already guaranteed, and his self-destruction only benefits their side. Calypso contemplates the devastating outcome that would have occurred had her father unleashed his true power. She notes that Bayon would have easily ended up completely defeated on the floor. The gray-haired grandmother looks on with deep displeasure, silently lamenting the missed opportunity. The chairperson politely requests Pierre to take his seat alongside the other family members. Calypso reminds herself to maintain a charming, innocent smile to keep up their public performance. She is stunned when her father smiles, wondering if he is openly mocking her. The chairperson calls for order, announcing that they will now officially resume the scheduled agenda. Just as the meeting begins to proceed, the heavy wooden doors of the hall suddenly rattle. The grand wooden doors are thrown open violently as someone loudly interrupts the proceeding. A breathless messenger at the doorway announces an urgent order from the head of the family. The messenger relays that the disciplinary committee must immediately halt and relocate to the Hall of Trials. The order dictates that the meeting will resume within the grand family meeting under the head's direct attendance. Calypso is left absolutely speechless and shocked by this highly unexpected turn of events. Calypso realizes that moving the venue to the family meeting will give Bayon a massive advantage. While Bayon's punishment was previously certain, the sudden relocation changes the entire situation. Moving the proceedings directly to the family meeting threatens to completely overturn their plans. Numerous, powerful, and influential forces within the family meeting are highly favorable to Bayon. Calypso bites her nail anxiously, fearing that Bayon might escape any punishment entirely. Agenor turns to his sister in a panic, asking her what they should do next. Onlookers whisper that there is nothing they can do since their grandmother's orders are absolute. Calypso sighs in disappointment, having really wanted to watch Bayon get thoroughly defeated today. Pierre remains entirely composed, looking down at his daughter with a calm, comforting expression. Calypso looks up, confusedly asking her father what he means by saying it is all right. The Duke offers a serene, reassuring gaze, silently signaling to her that everything is under control. Pierre tells her there is no need to force herself to speak so formally. Relieved, chibi Calypso quickly drops her formal act and acknowledges his comforting words. Pierre walks regally while holding Calypso, drawing a wave of attention like a pair of celebrities. Surrounding crowd gazes in awe, whispering in astonishment at the stunning entrance. Calypso asks if she can walk on her own, but her father bluntly remarks her short legs would take too long. Calypso proudly accepts the staring crowd, realizing that the spreading rumors will ultimately work in her favor. Looking at her father's stoic face, Calypso wonders what he hopes to gain from making such a public display. Agenor quietly leans in and asks his sister if she has ever visited the infamous Hall of Trials before. Calypso denies it to Agenor, though she internally mocks her brother for asking such an obvious question. The group walks through the grand hallway as the narration explains how trials rotate among the family's largest halls. The party finally reaches the end of the grand corridor, standing right outside their destination. A heavy, suspenseful boom echoes as the family stands before the towering blue double doors of the hall. Calypso looks on with wide eyes as she reflects on the two distinct meanings behind the Hall of Trials. Her bright blue eyes sparkle as she notes the first meaning refers to the room's vibrant blue doors. A glowing blue seal appears representing the second meaning, a place where historic family trials are decided. The gray-haired grandmother bows her head respectfully as they prepare to enter the grand assembly. Pierre carries his daughter with a calm, aloof expression as they prepare to face the council. The giant blue door slowly creak open, prompting Calypso to mentally brace herself for entering the space again. A formal voice rings out to officially announce the attendance of Pierre, Agenor, and Calypso. The crowd watches in stunned silence as Pierre, holding his daughter, steps forward alongside his young son. Onlookers gasp in absolute shock, whispering in amazement at seeing the legendary Lord Pierre in person. Ocula, the formidable head of the Orca family, sits regally on her grand throne. Ocula mockingly addresses Pierre, questioning why her son, whom she had long assumed dead, has suddenly appeared. Pierre maintains his composure, politely offering a formal greeting to the head of the family. Ocula responds with a harsh, cold insult, demanding to know why Pierre is still alive. A tense silence fills the vast blue hall as Pierre stands unflinchingly before Ocula's throne. Calypso clears her throat cutely, deliberately interrupting the hostile exchange between her father and grandmother. Holding her dress, Calypso offers a bright, overly theatrical greeting to her formidable grandmother. Calypso strikes an adorable pose with sparkling eyes, leaving both her father and brother completely speechless. Ocula shifts her cold gaze toward the young girl, dryly acknowledging her presence. Ocula smirks, noting that Calypso is already skilled at flattery and far better than her shameless father. Calypso whispers to Pierre, advising him to learn from her since his mother clearly loves flattery. Pierre responds with absolute silence, staring blankly at his daughter's ridiculous recommendation. Calypso commands her father to start practicing flattery immediately, while Agenor sweat drops in disbelief. Pierre breaks his stoic expression, letting out a soft chuckle as a gentle smile graces his lips. Calypso is caught completely off guard, staring in shock at her father's rare, genuine smile. Pierre warmly looks at his daughter, chuckling as he promises to keep her interesting advice in mind. A sudden chime rings in Calypso's mind as she reels from the shock of seeing her father smile so beautifully. The whispering crowd is deeply touched, noting that Pierre must truly treasure his youngest daughter.
A sudden thud interrupts the whispering as a man's hand firmly slaps the railing.
Rodison, Pierre's eldest brother, steps forward to suggest they immediately resume the delayed meeting. Rodezin patronizingly addresses his brother, but Pierre completely ignores him, walking past as the crowd notes the snub. Ocula's expression darkens with terrifying intensity as she demands to know how Rodezin dares to interrupt her. Trembling with sweat, Rodezin immediately bows his head and frantically apologizes to his mother. Calypso sticks her tongue out in smug delight, satisfied that her arrogant uncle got shut down instantly. A polite maid steps forward, guiding Pierre and his children to their assigned seats. A wave of tension sweeps through the room as the crowd realizes Pierre's group is being seated far in the back. Calypso fumes in anger, realizing that their distant seating is a blatant act of disrespect from her grandmother. Tugging her father's gold cord, Calypso anxiously asks what they should do about this clear insult. Calypso continues to frantically tug at Pierre, complaining that they are too far back to even be heard. Tapping her father's head, Calypso desperately warns him that this is not the time to play dumb. Pierre remains entirely unbothered, looking forward with a calm and serene expression. Bayon confidently asserts that their concerns will be heard today at the disciplinary committee. Calypso quietly reminds herself of the core reason they came to the assembly. Onlookers whisper in surprise at the sudden arrival of another family member. Bellis respectfully approaches and greets his grandmother as he enters the grand hall. Bellis notes that his grandmother must have a calculated reason for proposing this agenda. He flatters her by stating the entire assembly gathered solely to hear her voice. Bellis politely asks his grandmother to share her ultimate intentions with the family. Ocula dryly acknowledges his silver tongue, which Bellitis accepts with a polite bow. While Ocula dismisses Bellis to his seat, Calypso internally fumes at his opportunistic flattery. Ocula inquires about the intriguing incident that recently transpired at her educational institution. She commands those involved in the disruption to immediately step forward. Calypso and Bayon step forward as Ocula demands to know the reason behind the commotion. Bayon steps ahead and boldly requests to address the family head first. Bayon casually downplays the entire incident as a highly insignificant matter. The family's harsh philosophy is recalled, contrasting the trial with a minor conflict. Ocula calmly summarizes the entire dispute as a mere trivial scuffle. Bayon exaggerates the fight, claiming Calypso's actions undermine the family's dignity over a minor squabble. Calypso silently watches, curious to see how far Bayon will push his lies. Ocula questions if Bayon is claiming the rumors were simply an exaggerated accident. Bayon explains he only wanted to politely greet his cousin out of harmless curiosity. He pauses dramatically, preparing to twist the narrative in his favor. Bayon points at Calypso, falsely claiming she immediately insulted his father upon meeting. He accuses Calypso of boasting about being the daughter of the strong Lord Pierre. Calypso fumes at Bayon's audacious lies as he claims to be a victim of her cunning. Bayon confidently declares that he has a reliable witness to back up his claims.
A nervous short-haired witness stands ready to deliver their testimony.
Calypso is caught completely off guard by the sudden introduction of a witness. The witness nervously prepares to address the intimidating family council. The witness frantically claims they only wanted to assist Bayon, but were met with unprovoked violence. The witness points accusingly at Calypso, calling the fight entirely unfair due to her heritage. Calypso finds it amusingly pathetic that the witnesses are bragging about losing to a toddler. A second purple-haired witness nervously stammers in agreement with the testimony. The witness falsely asserts that Calypso was indeed the one who initiated the insults. While Bayon boasts of his solid proof, Calypso overhears the nervous witnesses congratulating themselves. Ocula begins to formulate her final conclusion regarding the presented testimonies. Ocula asks if Bayon is declaring himself entirely innocent of any wrongdoing. Bayon muses that his grandmother brought the disciplinary matter to the main meeting for a deeper reason. He declares his intent to use this moment to expose Calypso's allegedly vulgar nature. Calypso silently mocks his grandiose claims of exposing the truth. Bayan continues his public verbal attack, claiming Calypso lacks the strength to match her heritage. While Bayan insults her education, Calypso dryly remarks on his natural ability to lie. Calypso yawns in boredom, patiently waiting for the right moment to launch her counterattack. Bayan concludes that Calypso's poor discipline has disrupted the entire family's order. He enthusiastically agrees with the critical summary of her actions. Akila acknowledges the point, looking down coldly at the young girl. Akila notes that Calypso dared to challenge her chosen successor. Unleashing her powerful magic, Akila condemns Calypso for acting recklessly outside her boundaries. Calypso is suddenly lifted into the air by a powerful swirling vortex of water magic. Bound tightly in the magic sphere, Calypso struggles against her grandmother's immense power. Calypso desperately tries to endure as the crushing pressure of the water magic suffocates her. Calypso blinks her sparkling blue eyes in utter confusion, caught completely off guard. The overwhelming pressure suddenly vanishes as the water magic binding Calypso disperses completely. Pierre steps forward, demanding the head of the family remember his daughter is only 3 years old. Akila mockingly dismisses Pierre's concern, declaring that Calypso's failure to endure would be a disgrace. Akila continues her sharp critique, accusing Pierre of failing to teach his daughter basic societal foundations. While Akila continues her patronizing lecture, Calypso fumes in silent fury at her grandmother's audacity. Calypso suddenly freezes as a daunting realization washes over her, leaving her completely stunned. Calypso panics internally, realizing her father's denial of raising her could completely ruin her plans. The young girl stands in silence, dreading the imminent collapse of her carefully crafted facade. She fears all her boasting about her father's love and care will soon be exposed as a lie. Pierre remains quiet, his calm silence only adding to the mounting tension in the room. While Calypso desperately pleads in her mind, Pierre firmly declares he raised her entirely by his own rules. Calypso gasps in utter shock as her father begins walking forward with deliberate, heavy steps. Pierre proudly proclaims he taught his daughter to always secure victory in every single fight. Gently patting her head, Pierre praises Calypso for executing his instructions flawlessly down to the last detail. Akila scoffs in amusement, finding Pierre's sudden defense of his daughter to be completely unbelievable. Akila grumbles that her mood is ruined, clearly displeased by Pierre's unexpected interruption. Pierre calmly suggests they allow Calypso to recount the entire sequence of events from the beginning. He insists the truth must come directly from his daughter's mouth as they face the throne. Pierre pointedly asks if listening to both sides isn't the primary duty of the committee's chair. Stepping forward confidently, Calypso addresses her grandmother to initiate her side of the story. Calypso resolves to seize this golden opportunity to completely turn the tables in her favor. With a polite but calculated expression, Calypso requests to ask just one simple question. She asks if the core family rule truly forbids holding the strong accountable for their actions. Akila begrudgingly confirms that this is indeed the absolute philosophy of the Orca family. Calypso notes that the central focus of the entire assembly today is the recent brawl. She stresses that the most crucial aspect of the fight has yet to be revealed. Calypso promises to reveal an interesting truth if her grandmother agrees to judge the matter fairly. Sensing imminent danger, Bayan desperately interrupts and begs the head of the family for permission to speak. Calypso forcibly drags Bayan back while Akila commands them to stop their undignified bickering immediately. Akila commands Calypso to step forward and continue presenting her statement to the hall. Calypso asks how many people Bayan brought to the fight, revealing there were at least 10. She explains that Agenor fought 3, leaving her to face the remaining 7 opponents alone. Calypso proudly declares that Bayan was completely defeated by a 3-year-old child like herself. Calypso silently mocks Bayan, realizing his own witnesses only served to validate her overwhelming victory. Calypso confidently asserts that since she won, Bayan has no right to challenge her victory. She explains that a non-Orca friend of hers was unfairly dragged into the conflict. Calypso reveals that Bayan threatened to kill her friend if she did not join the fight. She argues that all her actions were merely a noble effort to protect her friend. Calypso boldly asks her grandmother to point out exactly where she went wrong in this matter. She reminds everyone of the Orca family's duty to protect and watch over others. Calypso points out that she was warned not to engage in battles with weaker families. Akila is impressed, noting that Calypso knows an exceptional amount for a 3-year-old child. Okula praises the clever turn of events, admitting that Calypso's explanation was genuinely entertaining. Akila's expression sharpens as she asks if Calypso also has a witness to back up her claims. Calypso mentally prepares herself, knowing her crucial moment has finally arrived. She quickly rules out her usual allies since they are currently unavailable or injured. Calypso's eyes widen as someone unexpected raises their hand to speak from the crowd. A formal voice calls out to the respected leader, drawing the entire room's attention. An elegant, white-haired woman steps forward to offer her testimony to the council. Akila curiously questions the newly stepped-forward woman's reason for addressing the family assembly. White-haired woman reveals that the threatened friend mentioned in Calypso's story is her twin sons. Calypso is caught off guard, suddenly realizing the elegant woman is Ruga and Ruba's mother. Calypso marvels at the immense family power that brought the prominent Veluga family to their gathering. The elegant woman formally introduces herself to the assembly as Ilya Veluga, head of the Veluga family. Ilya Veluga accuses Bayan of inflicting severe, near-fatal head injuries on her young son. Calypso is deeply confused, recalling she was told that Ruga was not severely injured. The charming blonde-haired man winks playfully and silently gestures for Calypso to keep quiet. Calypso smirks with renewed confidence, feeling reassured by her secret ally's subtle encouragement. Ilya Veluga demands the family leader treat this as a highly serious matter of unprovoked violence. She firmly declares that as the representative of all vassals, she cannot ignore this incident. Ilya argues that noble family members who respect weaker vassals should not face any punishment. The blonde-haired official explains that he reported the brawl and can bring other witnesses forward. Calypso happily celebrates her triumph as the tide of the trial completely turns in her favor. Akila narrows her eyes, deeply analyzing the heavy political weight of the presented testimonies. Akila suddenly bursts into roaring laughter, thoroughly amused by the unexpected twist of events. Akila mockingly dismisses Bayan for losing to a toddler while he desperately tries to protest. Akila acknowledges Calypso's statement, confirming she has heard the young girl's side clearly. Akila adopts a cold, imposing stance as she prepares to deliver her final authoritative judgment. Akila strictly lists Bayan's offenses of abusing his strength, breaking rules, and lying to the patriarch. Bayan is officially sentenced to immediate expulsion from the institution and a 1-year probation. Bayan's father desperately cries out, begging the head of the family to show mercy. He continues to plead for his son, asking for mercy based on his achievements. Akila coldly dismisses the desperate pleas, shifting her focus entirely back to Calypso. Calypso stands calmly in the center of the hall awaiting her grandmother's decision. Calypso hides a subtle, smug smile as she senses her complete victory in this trial. Calypso sweetly declares that she has absolutely no intention of undermining the leader's ultimate punishment. Ilya Veluga sits back down, pointing out that her twin sons are the biggest victims. Ilya declares her family will fully abide by Calypso's and the Lord's decisions. Akila accepts the resolution, finalizing her ruling without any room for further argument. With no objections raised by the jury, Bayan's severe punishment is officially set to begin. A beautiful floral motif appears, shifting the narrative to the strict societal rules of the family. The narrator explains that graduating early from an intermediate institution is vital for proving strength. Calypso muses that she could have easily gotten a suspension lifted, but Bayan lacks that capability. Calypso coldly concludes that Bayan only achieved his status through sheer luck, not real talent. Piazelda's son, Bellis, is introduced as the next key figure in the family hierarchy. Calypso's brilliant political play effectively knocks Bayan out of the successor race. With Bayan completely cast aside, the playing field for the succession battle shifts dramatically. Calypso eagerly eats popcorn, excited to watch her brothers fiercely compete for the top ranking. Akila raises her finger, announcing she has one final declaration to make before concluding. Akila officially recognizes Calypso as the direct descendant, securing her high status in the family. Calypso celebrates this massive achievement, overjoyed that her ultimate goal has been successfully realized. Calypso reflects that obtaining this official recognition was her primary reason for attending the meeting. Pierre gently pats Calypso's head, wordlessly expressing his pride in her brilliant victory. Pierre smiles warmly down at Calypso, showing his rare affection and deep pride. Calypso happily responds to her father, basking in the thrill of her sweet triumph. Calypso joyfully hugs her father, celebrating the exciting thrill of being the victorious protagonist. The entire hall continues to buzz with low whispers following the dramatic council meeting. Calypso stays close to her father as they prepare to leave the council room together. Oculus smirks with quiet intrigue, highly anticipating what the clever young girl will do next. A mysterious dark background appears, displaying text expressing sudden surprise at an unexpected discovery. Akila observes that most people are completely overwhelmed by the immense pressure of the family head. Akila is surprised to realize that the young Calypso actually seems to enjoy the attention. Akila internally praises Calypso's top-notch physical enhancement and her natural talent for combat. Despite her physical strength, Calypso is still completely unable to manifest any water magic. Bellis approaches calmly as Akila commands him to step closer to her throne. Akila asks Bellis for his honest thoughts on the current situation regarding Calypso. Akila recalls that Bellis was previously the youngest descendant to receive official recognition at 6. Akila points out that Calypso broke his record and even won Pierre's rare support. Akila prompts Bellis to share his opinion freely since her main rival has been defeated. Bellis declares that Akula's punishment is fair, stating that rule breakers deserve no mercy. Bellis argues that Calypso must also be held responsible for injuring her classmate. Bellis concludes both are at fault, prompting Akila to praise his expectedly logical response. Calypso fumes in silent rage, having overheard her older brother trying to implicate her. Calypso is deeply offended that her own brother would accuse her during her defense. Calypso angrily resolves to correct her brother's terrible personality before leaving the mansion. Agenor happily runs over to congratulate his sister on receiving the official family recognition. Agenor notes the assembly is essentially over, while other family members depart in the background. Calypso acknowledges her brother's congratulations while keeping her guard up against the others. Calypso notices her other siblings and their father glaring at her with intense hostility. Her dark-haired sister turns back to cast an incredibly cold and menacing glare. With a sharp movement, her sister whips her head away, completely ignoring Calypso. Calypso mockingly sticks her tongue out, entirely unbothered by her sister's hostile attitude. Ilya Veluga requests permission from Ocula to speak before the family assembly officially concludes. Ilya shocks everyone by declaring that the Veluga family will now follow Calypso's lead. Ilya formally announces her family's complete endorsement of Calypso as the next successor. Calypso panics internally, wondering if Ilya forgot that she is only 3 years old. Stunned by the unexpected declaration of support, Calypso stands speechless as the crowd applauds. Calypso sweat drops in utter disbelief, having never wanted to become the head of the family. The scene transitions to the outside of the grand mansion under a bright sunny sky. Pierre carries Calypso outside the mansion, accompanied by Agenor, while the servants bow respectfully. Pierre asks Calypso if she wants to speak, reassuring her about the staring onlookers. Agenor comments that none of the other family members are genuine allies anyway. Pierre offers to chase away any annoying onlookers, earning a dry response from Calypso. Calypso secretly worries if her father will try to eliminate her for deceiving him. Agenor suddenly runs ahead, leaving his servant to scramble and catch up with him. Frantic boy chases after Agenor, leaving Calypso highly confused by his sudden appearance. Calypso sighs and closes her eyes, trying to ignore the chaotic antics of her brother. Ilya Veluga smiles warmly, her expression soft and welcoming as she approaches. Calypso nervously wonders if she should simply turn around and run away from her. The view shifts up to the vibrant green leaves rustling against the clear sky. The massive family estate stands grandly under the bright sun, a symbol of succession power. Calypso rubs her head in exasperation, trying to process the overwhelming events of the day. Ilya thanks Calypso for meeting privately to avoid any prying eyes and ears outside. Calypso gets straight to the point, asking Ilya what she really wants to discuss. Calypso asks why Ilya used her valuable right of choice to nominate her specifically. Ilya reaffirms her choice, though Calypso remains highly skeptical of this unusual political move. Calypso wonders what Ocula could possibly be scheming behind the scenes of this decision. Calypso questions the rules of succession, and Ilya explains the true power of a vassal's choice. Ilya reveals that Ocula restricted her from sharing full information using her water power. The narrator explains that the vassal's right of choice carries an irreversible weight that cannot be undone. Calypso frantically waves her hands in protest, panicking as she realizes the vassal family's fate is now tied directly to hers. Ilya Veluga smiles warmly, assuring her that if Calypso succeeds, their families will gain everything. Calypso silently frets over the immense pressure of being the center of an all-in gamble with no safety net. Calypso frantically screams to question her choice, while Ilya peacefully explains it is because she saved her children. The twin silver-haired boys sleep peacefully in their bed, completely out of danger. Ilya notes that out of all the descendants, Calypso is the only one who is ever considered the weak. Calypso stands silently on the bright green lawn, surrounded by blooming yellow flowers. Ilya explains that her public declaration of support was the only reason this private meeting was permitted. A narrative flashback reveals that 30 years ago, the patriarch summoned the leaders of the 8 vassal families. The text details how the selected vassal families were granted the highly coveted right to choose the next head. The magical presentation highlights the striking blue-haired woman destined to become the family's next leader. The continuous narrative reinforces the absolute finality of the vassal's chosen successor. Calypso deadpans, dryly reminding the smiling adult that she is only a 3-year-old child. Calypso warns of the severe dangers facing a young successor, which Ilya readily acknowledges. Ilya firmly confirms that the successor they chose to back is none other than Calypso herself. Ilya expresses her excitement to work together, leaving a comically blackened chibi Calypso utterly shell-shocked. Calypso clutches her head in absolute frustration while Ilya maintains her serene, pleasant smile. Ilya's gaze grows sharp and serious as she prepares to reveal a grave truth. Ilya reveals that her child almost died, catching Calypso completely off guard after being told otherwise. Ilya admits with a pensive look that her husband had told a white lie to downplay the severity. A grim flashback shows Ruga collapsing in agony and desperately pleading for help during a severe panic attack. Calypso fumes in silent rage, realizing she would have punished Bayon far more severely had she known the truth. Ilya giggles softly, reassuring her that Ruga is perfectly fine now despite Calypso's intense anger. Ilya explains that she acted just like Pierre, who broke his long seclusion solely for his daughter's sake. Pierre is shown looking commanding and noble, having stepped out of his isolation to protect his daughter.
Ilya enthusiastically declares that there is no turning back, much to Calypso's absolute dismay.
Calypso panics internally, wondering how she can possibly reject the successor role after hearing their resolve. Calypso screams in silent frustration, having never wanted to become the head of the family. The scene transitions to the grand exterior of the sunlit family estate. Calypso collapses onto the large blue sofa, completely exhausted by the day's dramatic events. Pierre enters the room and knows that most of the other issues have been resolved. Pierre looks down at his daughter with a calm, deeply serious expression. Calypso is caught completely off guard by her father's suddenly emotional, chibi-style appearance. Calypso resolves that while she has avoided it until now, she must finally face her father's questions. Pierre calmly suggests they begin their discussion by addressing the matter of her titles. Calypso panics internally, wondering if her father has realized she completely deceived and fooled him. Pierre directly asks if she knew he wasn't her real father, and Calypso quietly admits she knew from the start. Calypso looks up in complete shock, eagerly asking how he could have possibly known. Pierre advises her that after today's events, she can no longer treat her mentor the same way. Calypso realizes that standing out this much will inevitably attract dangerous assassination threats. Calypso silently worries about being plagued by threats and her dangerous brother Bellis making a move. Calypso laments her stressful situation, wondering why she is the only one panicking. Pierre recalls how Calypso boldly stood up to defend him during the disciplinary committee meeting. Pierre remembers how the young girl used her power to protect him during the assembly. A quiet moment highlights how Pierre's entire outlook changed solely because of Calypso. A tragic memory reveals that across 3 lifetimes, Pierre had completely abandoned all hope. Pierre asks to clarify a detail about the previous father she had mentioned. Pierre gently asks if that previous father was indeed the ideal dad she had wished for. A warm flashback shows a loving father happily lifting his young daughter in the air. Calypso flatly rejects the idea, her eyes hidden beneath her hat as she says no. Calypso looks to the side with a quiet, solemn expression as she listens to him. Pierre looks at her gently, noting that she likely doesn't understand what he is saying. Clutching her shirt, Calypso expresses her deep desire to return to her real home and family. Calypso says she does not care if he gets mad or decides to punish her. Pierre looks directly at her, firmly offering to become her real father. Calypso looks up in complete shock as Pierre asks if she would want him to. Pierre tightly clutches his cloak, asking if this is something she truly does not want. Calypso laments having to watch the world end because she could no longer trust uncertainties. Memory reveals a mother cradling her crying baby, lamenting the years of abandonment and neglect. A purple narrative bubble questions why he is suddenly making such a major decision. Pierre sadly agrees with her point, closing his eyes in quiet resignation. Pierre moves his hand to his cloak, noting how different she is from him. Pierre startles Calypso by stepping closer to ask if she is angry, which she denies. Pierre kneels down to eye level, offering to make her a formal proposal. Pierre kneels before Calypso on the blue couch as she looks at him in surprise. Pierre looks at her with a gentle, sincere expression against a background of blooming roses. Calypso opens her mouth to speak, hesitating as she prepares to reveal her feelings. Calypso reflects on the many people she resented, noting she could never hate him. Flashback shows young Calypso carrying heavy boxes of paperwork, thanking him for making her strong. A bright memory shows chibi Calypso smiling happily, surrounded by floating yellow flowers. A warm flashback shows Pierre carrying Calypso, declaring his absolute infinite love for his daughter. Glowing text amidst a starry blue sky emphasizes the infinite depth of his deep love. Calypso is left speechless, her large blue eyes reflecting her profound shock and confusion. Pierre calmly explains that such protective behavior is simply in the nature of killer whales. Pierre offers to continue serving as her guardian, promising to stop if she wishes. Calypso clutches her dress tightly in silence, torn by his unexpected offer. Pierre sadly wonders if she is rejecting him, realizing their bond would have ended without her. Bold blue text declares that their bond would have been permanently severed without her. Calypso suddenly grabs Pierre's gloved hand, firmly demanding that he make a sacred oath. Pierre's eyes widen in surprise as Calypso tells him to swear if his feelings are true. Calypso holds his hand, determinedly demanding that he swear his oaths by the sea. Pierre is taken aback by her resolve, realizing he must not disappoint her expectations. Grabbing her hand, Pierre formally begins the oath, stating his name and resolve. Surrounded by swirling magical water, Pierre vows to serve as Calypso's true father. Pierre swears his eternal devotion until his death, leaving Calypso staring at him in awe. Clasping hands over a glowing crest, they finalize the sacred oath in the sea's name. Pierre releases her hand, warning that this oath leaves absolutely no room for retreat. Pierre explains that breaking this unbreakable sea oath would mean losing everything he has. Calypso panics internally, realizing she has accidentally bound a dangerous guardian to her side. Calypso smiles brightly, accepting his sincerity while resolving to ignore his past neglect. Pierre asks why she changed her title for him, prompting her to suggest keeping master. Pierre looks slightly dejected and sulky after she insists on using the formal title. Pierre comments on her thoroughness, prompting Calypso to attribute it to her mother. Smirking, Calypso resolves to use this situation to her advantage, requesting a single wish. Calypso poses excitedly, her eyes sparkling with joy and anticipation for what comes next. Pierre agrees to get approval for her trip, prompting a joyful reaction from Calypso. Pierre looks back at her, promising to listen to whatever plan she has prepared. Pierre smiles warmly, stating she must drop master once he earns her true recognition. Calypso nervously avoids eye contact, stammering in response to Pierre's unexpected and suspicious proposal. Pierre watches her silently, deeply analyzing her highly unusual and mature behavior. Pierre considers how she acts like a born fighter who excels at resolving difficult crises. Pierre realizes that Calypso's actions completely deviate from those of a normal 3-year-old child. He notes that her bubbly, adorable appearance is merely a calculated front she puts on. He sadly concludes that she has never expected anything from him since they met. He remains deeply baffled by how a mere 3-year-old could act with such detachment. The warm memory of carrying his quiet daughter fuels his desire to earn her trust. Pierre recalls Calypso proudly boasting about winning her fight, highlighting her fierce independence. He remembers the immense, indescribable fury he felt upon realizing how much she had suffered. Back in the present, a soft knock sounds as Calypso asks her master for permission to enter. Calypso playfully peeks into the room, her bright blue eyes shining with cheerful warmth. Pierre calmly welcomes her inside, confirming that he has successfully completed all of his training. Calypso suspects her training is becoming more intense, but Pierre casually dismisses her concerns. Calypso sighs in exhaustion, drinking her water while Pierre remains unbothered at his desk. Setting her glass down, Calypso asks if she can pose a personal question to him. Calypso directly asks Pierre if he truly loves her as his actual daughter. Pierre's silent reaction prompts Calypso to awkwardly ask if she spoke out of turn. Pierre admits he does not understand love, which Calypso completely expected. Calypso shrugs dismissively, completely unfazed by his emotional limitations and cold reply. Seeing his shocked face, Calypso quickly laughs it off by claiming she was only joking. Calypso explains she has no expectations and does not expect him to love her as a daughter. Instead, she proposes working to establish a mutually beneficial relationship between them. Calypso requests that Pierre simply step in to protect her whenever it becomes necessary. She admits she does not know what love feels like, asking him to just worry when she hurts. Calypso holds onto his sleeve, sealing their silent, practical pact of mutual protection. Outside the sunlit mansion, Calypso rejoices over being able to attend the Dragon Festival. Calypso reflects on the events from 2 days ago when she received the news. Pierre had approached her, indicating he had something important to tell her. Pierre formally announced that her trip to the Dragon Festival had officially been approved. With the permission secured, Calypso happily notes it is only a matter of time before they depart. A blue-haired man is shown, representing the festival's celebration of the Dragon Deity and Dragon Duke. Calypso ponders the mystery of the Dragon Duke opening a dimension through unknown means. She decides that the festival is the perfect opportunity to meet and get to know others. Calypso hopes to build strong friendships and ultimately settle down there to escape her family. She recalls that in her past life, her mobility was restricted until she turned 10. Calypso appreciates Pierre's support, which helped her build a reputation, gain strength, and secure this trip. Calypso is deeply moved, tearfully praising Pierre internally for being such a highly useful father. Suddenly, a soft rustling sound from the garden bushes catches her immediate attention. The blonde twin boys unexpectedly leap out from the greenery, excitedly calling out to her. The 3 children sit near the fountain, laughing and playing together in the bright sunlight. Pierre silently watches them from behind a pillar, observing his daughter playing with her companions. The blonde twins run up to Calypso, excitedly calling her their master with bright smiles. They sit casually by the water, running over to her with great energy and excitement. The twins pass along their parents' warm regards and invite her to visit their home. Calypso pats one twin's head, prompting the other to eagerly beg for pats too. Calypso notices that the red gemstone accessory she gave him is still carefully attached. The quick-witted twin correctly guesses that Calypso has absolutely no intention of visiting their house. Calypso is caught completely off guard, sweating nervously as she wonders how he knew. Calypso scratches her head, marveling at how incredibly smart and quick-witted her young disciples are. Calypso looks on anxiously, internally expressing her relief that she avoided a potentially traumatic situation. The twin boys happily declare that their master is a truly wonderful person. Calypso smiles sheepishly, silently dismissing their praise by noting she's not actually that good of a person. Calypso's expression turns solemn as she reflects on what a truly good person would do in her position. Calypso contemplates the political consequences if she chooses to publicly support Agenor as the successor. The twins look at her in confusion as she suddenly stops in her tracks. The boys point out her furrowed brow, prompting Calypso to reflect on the trouble of getting too close to others. Calypso leads them back to class, causing the twins to panic as they realize they forgot about their lessons. The twins eagerly beg to hold her hands, making Calypso sweat drop over their lack of normalcy. A dark-haired youth in a black coat suddenly calls out Calypso's full name, startling her. The twin boys look back in confusion as Calypso halts to address the unexpected visitor. Calypso calmly instructs her two young disciples to head up to class ahead of her. Calypso stands alone, her bright blue eyes filled with caution as she prepares for a confrontation. Passing thought reminds her of urgent matters she must address immediately. The blue-haired youth asks if she was actively looking for him. Calypso confirms her intent, asking if he was able to sense her presence. Calypso directly demands that he state his business quickly so they can get to the point. The blue-haired youth explains that he simply came to speak with her. He looks at her in amusement, questioning why she has instinctively taken a defensive combat stance. Calypso retorts that his typical method of communication relies on actions rather than words. The blue-haired youth tilts his head, feigning ignorance at her sharp accusation. He takes a step back, assuring her that he would never challenge her to a fight in a public training area. Calypso remains highly skeptical, analyzing his calculating nature and resolving not to leave the safe training grounds. He notes with interest that she speaks with absolute familiarity about his personal habits. He questions how she could possibly know about his hidden penchant for fighting. Calypso panics in disbelief as a massive aura of water suddenly erupts around him. Calypso internally marvels at his immense power, counting the numerous water streams he effortlessly conjured. Bellis muses aloud about a past opponent who stubbornly refused to stay quiet even after being defeated. Calypso struggles to reconcile this aggressive behavior with the meek reputation Bellis supposedly had. Calypso wonders if Bellis was simply pretending to be docile during his training days. Bellis claims sincerity in wanting peace, pointing out that she has also instinctively released her own water magic. Calypso remains unfazed, firmly demanding that he either get to the point or leave her alone. A tense silence falls between them as the wind rustles through the courtyard garden. Bellis smiles softly, seemingly pleased by her fierce and unyielding attitude. Bellis admits he is genuinely intrigued by her, addressing her directly by her full name. Calypso finds his sudden interest amusing, wondering what his true motives are. Bellis humbles himself, claiming he is still a novice who cannot properly control water power. Calypso realizes that his true focus does not actually lie with her. She concludes that his ultimate interest is directed toward her guardian, Pierre. Calypso strictly warns him to drop his unwelcome interest, pointing out his true target is not her. Bellis denies her accusation, claiming he has absolutely no interest in Pierre. Bellis casually claims he has no father, prompting Calypso to mentally label him a real piece of work. Bellis offers his hand, suggesting he might support her as a potential successor depending on the situation. Bellis explains that her impressive performance at the family meeting motivated him to seek her out. He expresses his desire to see if she is someone worthy of his respect and political support. Calypso suddenly grabs his finger, acknowledging his words with a sharp and knowing response. Smiling sweetly while crushing his hand, Calypso politely asks him to lend his ear for a moment. Bellis is completely stunned, sweating in shock at her immense physical strength. Whispering directly into his ear, Calypso coldly tells her elder brother to stop being ridiculous. Calypso challenges him to swear by the sea if he is innocent, leaving him trembling at her cunning nature. Calypso reaches her glowing hand toward her brother, ready to counter his sudden strike. Calypso stares in wide-eyed shock as a massive fist suddenly stops right before her. The powerful fist halts abruptly, barely grazing the young girl's alert and focused face. Calypso swiftly conjures her own water magic, readying herself to retaliate against her attacker. Calypso frustrates over her tiny stature, lamenting that she missed the chance to twist his wrist. Bellis states that cheap tricks will not work on him, while Calypso silently mocks him for acting like a hot-tempered child. He then suddenly asks if she is going to the Dragon Festival, catching her off guard. Calypso grows highly suspicious of Bellis as he smugly displays his control over the water. Bellis boasts about his close relationship with their grandmother, claiming he knows all her secrets. Bellis admits he found Pierre's direct request highly intriguing, allowing everything to fall into place. Calypso silently pleads that her worst fears and dark predictions about him are completely wrong. Bellis flashes a deceptively bright, flower-filled smile, masking his true, cunning intentions. Finding her prediction confirmed, Calypso panics internally and curses her brother's reckless, crazy decision. A close-up of Bellis's glowing blue eyes reveals his fierce and unyielding intensity. Calypso realizes the danger, noting his eyes have the same terrifying look from their fight. Calypso dreads her brother's intrusive nature, realizing his competitive switch has officially been flipped. Bellis begins to add another detail, sending Calypso into an absolute fit of panic screaming. Bellis delivers the final blow by announcing that their grandmother has summoned her to meet. Calypso walks nervously into the grand sunlit hall, looking around the massive room. Calypso observes the dark, opulent surroundings, noting that the killer whale's domain is entirely pitch black. Calypso puts on a polite, sweet facade as she formally announces her arrival to her grandmother. The grandmother looks down coldly, rubbing her neck with an air of absolute authority. The grandmother comments on her tiny size, prompting Calypso to wonder if she was summoned just to pick a fight. The grandmother notes that Calypso seemed much larger during their tense family meeting. The grandmother mockingly asks if she shrank into a rice cake, deeply insulting Calypso. The grandmother commands her to sit, stating she summoned her out of curiosity regarding something interesting. The grandmother inquires about the investigation Calypso requested regarding her predecessor's qualifications and the abusive maid. Calypso wonders why her grandmother is only raising this issue now, suspecting political motives. Calypso confirms her intent, explaining the horrific conditions and total lack of other children her age. The grandmother questions her meaning, asking if Calypso is claiming survival despite all others dying. Calypso boldly asserts that she only survived because of her own personal strength and resilience. Calypso points out that the competition was unfair and rigged, leading directly to the children's deaths. Calypso pulls no punches, coldly telling her grandmother that such neglected competition is actually murder. Text panels reveal that all children sent to that facility died before turning 3. Bold red text poses a harrowing question comparing the children's neglect to literal infanticide. The grandmother dismisses the tragedy, claiming no one would care if weak children simply perished. The grandmother notes that the maid's neglect essentially wasted potentially valuable and talented family assets. Calypso smiles subtly, realizing her words are finally provoking a reaction from her grandmother. Pierre suddenly barges into the room, surprising both his daughter and his shocked mother. Calypso's jaw drops in utter confusion, sweat dropping as she wonders why her father is here. The grandmother demands to know where Pierre learned such rude, uninvited manners. Pierre looks on with a calm, handsome expression, completely unfazed by his mother's irritation. Grandmother insults Pierre's mental state, while Calypso hilariously eats popcorn, cheering on her father's verbal assault. Furious, the grandmother unleashes her powerful water magic, warning Pierre about his unchecked arrogance. The powerful magic blast sends Calypso flying backward, screaming in sheer terror and confusion. Calypso braces herself, surrounded by swirling water that suddenly forms a protective shield around her. Calypso slowly opens her bright blue eye, peering out from behind the protective water barrier. Calypso looks up in relief, realizing she is completely safe from the destructive magic blast. Pierre steps in, clutching his fist as he absorbs the water magic to defend his daughter. Pierre stands protectively in front of his mother, having successfully absorbed and neutralized her magic power. Pierre glares at his mother, coldly telling her to face him directly instead of trying to kill his daughter. The grandmother smirks, noting she expected his intervention and blames him for his daughter's insolent attitude. Pierre declares he has finally found a child he likes and resolves to cherish and protect her. Calypso fumes in disbelief, inwardly shouting about how ridiculous it is since her grandmother nearly killed her. Sitting back down comfortably, the grandmother casually tells Pierre to sit and asks why he came. Pierre firmly asserts his duty to accompany his daughter to prevent any harm his mother might cause. The grandmother mocks Pierre for running to the rescue, though he stubbornly denies having run. Calypso gazes up in quiet awe, deeply moved by her father's sudden and protective arrival. Pierre holds his daughter close and asks if she is hurt, to which she reassures him. The grandmother mockingly asks Pierre if he finds his own child beautiful and worthy of care. The grandmother decides to include Pierre in the discussion regarding the punishment for Calypso's abusive maid. The grandmother asks how to handle the maid, while Calypso questions why they are bypassing a proper investigation. Calypso expects Pierre to dismiss the issue, but is shocked when he coldly suggests executing the maid. Pierre emits a terrifying, blood-red aura of absolute fury, his blue eyes glowing with murderous intent. The scene shifts into a dark, swirling void as the narrative focuses on the maid's past. Lumi, a maid with distinct facial markings, laments her miserable life and claims she was always nice. Lumi reacts violently to perceived insults about her pufferfish beast heritage, causing chaos and facing dismissal. Her colleagues gossip about her strange behavior, leaving Lumi feeling victimized and anxious about her future. Whispered rumors reveal that Lumi's selfish actions previously cost others their jobs, fueling her deep resentment. Lumi avoids responsibility for dropping a vase, angrily blaming others for failing to catch it. Text panels explain that Lumi's colleagues avoided her due to selfishness she remained completely blind to. After bouncing between jobs, Lumi eventually found employment as a nanny at a childcare facility. She initially found comfort in caring for infants, noting they did not actively avoid her. Lumi's mind twists in jealousy, viewing her own life as a ruined, unfixable failure. Resenting the children's bright futures, she turned to murder, finding it easier after the first time. Calypso was meant to be her next victim, unaware of the lurking danger. Lumi gasps in shock, suddenly recognizing Calypso as the child who poured hot water on her. The memory shows Lumi dismissively claiming the water was merely lukewarm despite its burning heat. Now tied up, Lumi trembles in terror as Calypso calmly confirms her true identity. Calypso smiles sweetly, declaring she remembers every single detail of her 10 years of suffering. Calypso promises Lumi will experience the exact same abuse she inflicted, including rotten food and hot water. Lumi internally rages in confusion, dismissing the accusations as childish spite over being slightly disliked. Lumi flinches in sudden realization as a deeper sense of dread begins to sink in. Calypso delivers a chilling warning, stating that victims never forget the crimes their abusers easily dismiss. Lumi gasps in horror as Pierre is revealed waiting silently by the massive double doors. Pierre calmly asks his daughter if she has finished speaking, and she confirms she has. Pierre states the maid will be declared a murderer of children and face execution. As they walk, Calypso carefully asks Pierre if he finds her strangely mature behavior odd. Pierre questions her meaning, prompting Calypso to remind him of her talk about 10 years of memories. Calypso clutches his sleeve, questioning if he finds her behavior completely uncharacteristic of a child. A silent, tense moment passes between father and daughter as they study each other's expressions. Gently reaching down, Pierre places a comforting hand on his daughter's head. Pierre pats her head gently, showing his silent acceptance of her unusual nature. Pierre reassures her, stating he requires absolutely no explanation regarding her unusual maturity. Pierre lifts her up in a warm embrace, surrounded by swirling, protective blue water magic. Pierre regrets not protecting her sooner, though he acknowledges that dwelling on the past is meaningless now. Calypso teasingly compares his empty regrets to a gambler's hollow promises, questioning his trustworthiness. Calypso demands proof through actions, while Pierre readily agrees and warns her to hold on tight. Calypso observes with intrigue how remarkably fast Pierre is at analyzing and assessing situations. Pierre compares her speech to his mother's, prompting an offended Calypso to call it a deep insult. Two walk away together, peaceful flowers blooming around them as their bond grows stronger. The grandmother grants Pierre the authority to handle the maid's punishment himself. She nonchalantly admits her laziness, expecting him to deal with it for interrupting her. Turning her attention to Calypso, she demands to know her reason for attending the Dragon Festival. Calypso prepares to deliver a carefully calculated answer designed to win her grandmother's absolute favor. She brings up the exclusion of aquatic beastmen from the festival, a rule rumored by the maids. She boldly declares her plan to go and personally demonstrate the unmatched greatness of their aquatic heritage. Calypso acts out a dramatic performance of dominance, which leaves her grandmother laughing uproariously. Amused, her grandmother agrees to the departure and inquires about the scheduled date. Upon hearing the timeline, her grandmother immediately tells them to depart much earlier. She encourages Calypso to go ahead and humiliate the arrogant land beasts. Dismissing them with a wave, she tells the father and daughter they are free to leave. Pierre quietly carries his daughter out of the grandmother's chamber. Calypso looks back anxiously as her grandmother calls out to her one last time. The grandmother tells Calypso to survive until the day she is called by her real name. Pierre calmly reassures his daughter as they walk away together. He vows to protect her from any harm, a dark protective resolve gleaming in his eyes. Back in her chamber, the grandmother shivers in disgust at Pierre's sudden sentimental display. She yells after them to leave quickly, utterly repulsed by their emotional conversation. Later, Pierre bickers with a glasses-wearing maid regarding a seemingly impossible 3-day task. The scene smoothly transitions forward as the preparations for the upcoming journey begin. Calypso stares out of the window as the day of her departure finally arrives. Dressed in an elegant white gown with a purple ribbon, she looks bright and hopeful. The legend of the Empire's guardian deity, a massive blue dragon, is revealed. The imperial lineage began when the first emperor married the majestic blue dragon. Their child with the lion markings took the throne, dividing the imperial line. Meanwhile, the child marked by the dragon was granted the noble title of duke. Although the dragon duke is assumed to live in luxury, the dark truth is far different. A terrified maid frantically denies that the duke's life is easy or glamorous. She recalls the gloomy and oppressive atmosphere of her assignment at the estate. Initially excited for the job, she was soon warned of a terrifying secret task. A menacing shadow warns her that the servants are practically invisible to survive. She is strictly warned to never speak of anything she sees or hears. The shadow delivers a chilling threat of a brutal death if she speaks out. She trembles upon realizing the famous Dragon Duke does not even live in his castle. She shudders, realizing with absolute dread that the Duke is actually a monster. Trembling, she nervously pulls back a heavy curtain to announce that dinner is ready. The heavy sound of a sudden thud-thud-thud echoing through the dark hall sends her running in panic. She peeks back in horror as a terrifying presence approaches. Dropping the tray in a panic, she screams an apology as glasses shatter on the floor. She flees down the dark hallway, crying out for her life as a dark shadow looms. Glass cup falls through dark water, reflecting the eerie depths. A hand reaches down to pick up a cold piece of raw meat from the floor. A young blue-haired boy ravenously tears into the raw meat with tears in his eyes. A beastly shadow looms over the lonely child as he eats in the dark room. The focus shifts to a bright sky, marking the day of departure for the City of Dragons. Calypso arrives at her school first, turning in surprise as someone calls out to her. The blonde twin boys run toward her excitedly to ask if she is truly leaving. She confirms her imminent departure, while the twins eagerly invite her to join them for lunch. Smiling warmly, she declines their offer, explaining she must say her farewells and leave immediately. She walks away with a bittersweet sigh, feeling a touch of sadness at leaving them behind. The blonde twins excitedly invite Calypso to visit their home after she returns from her trip. The twins wish her well, and Calypso promises to consider visiting them when she returns. Their hands gently slide apart as they say their final farewells. Suddenly, one of the blonde twins firmly grabs Calypso's hand to stop her from leaving. With tearful eyes, the blonde boy anxiously asks if she is never coming back. Calypso silently notes how quickly perceptive children can realize the true gravity of a situation. Calypso smiles sweetly and waves goodbye, putting on a cheerful front for the boys. The blonde twins weep openly as they watch her walk away from them. Calypso turns and runs quickly through the grand hallway toward the exit. The carriage rattles down a beautiful tree-lined path, beginning the long journey. The carriage moves steadily forward under the bright, warm sunlight of a new day. Calypso anxiously contemplates whether jumping out of the moving carriage would be a fatal mistake. A suffocating, chilly silence fills the dark carriage as she sits with her father. Calypso internally fumes at the incredibly tense and suffocating atmosphere inside the carriage. Calypso politely asks Pierre if she can switch to riding with the maids instead. Pierre instantly refuses, leaving Calypso completely shocked and exasperated by his stubbornness. Calypso argues that nannies are better for development, but Pierre counters that parental presence is essential. Calypso insists that a true parent should respect their child's freedom and choices. Pierre sternly points out the difference between granting freedom and indulging or neglecting a child. Calypso is deeply amused by his hypocrisy, recalling his own 3 years of neglect. A frozen, awkward silence descends upon them once again inside the cold carriage. Calypso peeks out from her seat to observe the quiet passenger sitting opposite them. Calypso blames the quiet young man for ruining her trip, questioning his true motives. Calypso wonders why he chose to accompany her rather than dealing with their enemies. As Calypso ponders his inclusion, she is startled when Pierre suddenly pinches her cheek. Pierre asks Calypso if she didn't originally request that he play the role of a father. Pierre explains that he is simply trying his best to behave like a father now. Calypso is completely dumbfounded, frantically trying to recall when she ever made such a request. Pierre recalls her unusual behavior as a newborn, claiming she nearly cried while calling him master. Calypso protests his rough handling, but Pierre insists that cheek pinching is part of fatherhood. Bellis finally speaks up, coldly questioning why Pierre is abusing a child. Bellis continues his mocking critique, noting Pierre's immense strength but lack of maturity. Bellis bluntly accuses Pierre of having a childish hobby of tormenting little kids. Calypso is caught completely off guard by Bellis's sudden and bold intervention. Pierre glares coldly at Bellis, demanding to know what his problem is. Bellis repeats a sharp insult, refusing to back down from the intimidating Duke. Calypso watches the tense confrontation unfold, bewildered by their bizarre behavior. Calypso expects her father to act like an adult and ignore Bellis's obvious provocations. Instead, Pierre unleashes a murderous aura, accusing Bellis of trying to exploit his weakness. Sensing the rising danger, Calypso demands they take their fight outside the carriage. She coldly suggests they bury the loser discreetly so nobody notices their disappearance. Calypso firmly explains that she will not let their petty bickering ruin her festival trip. She warns them that she will find their deaths incredibly boring if it disrupts her plans. Calypso resolves to take Misa's carriage with the maids if they refuse to behave. The carriage falls into a tense, silent deadlock as the journey continues. Calypso silently wonders if her harsh warning was actually effective in stopping them. The heavy carriage wheels keep turning as they travel deeper into the forest. Bellis quietly reads his book while Pierre rests his eyes across from him. Pierre opens his eyes, casting a silent, calculating glance across the carriage. Calypso shudders at the deathly quiet atmosphere, utterly detesting the awkward silence. Calypso remembers the painful whispers of land dwellers mocking her aquatic beastman heritage. Her thoughts turn gloomy as she recalls unpleasant memories of her childhood. Looking to break the silence, Calypso asks Pierre about the Dragon Festival's atmosphere. She urges him to share his experiences from other royal celebrations he attended. Pierre recalls attending several royal festivals during his youth and early adulthood. When Calypso asks for details, Pierre compares them to their own family's events. The narrator introduces the Empire's 3 major festivals, starting with the Dragon and Earth festivals. The Water Festival is highlighted as the most significant event for aquatic beastmen. Despite its scale, land dwellers mockingly refer to it as a fishy-smelling gathering. Looming dark shadows represent the deep-seated prejudice of the land-dwelling beastmen. Calypso begins to suspect they have vastly different definitions of a festival. A stylized notebook entry reveals Pierre's festival memories consist of fighting a polar bear. His other memories include fighting a giant shark and defeating a poisonous fox. Calypso questions his violent recollections, but Pierre proudly emphasizes his victorious battle achievements. Pierre jokingly calls his fiercely competitive daughter the pride of their family. A sudden quiet settles inside the carriage as they continue their journey. Calypso notices her father's unusually quiet composure and decides to investigate the matter. Pierre sits quietly with a calm, elegant expression amidst bright floral decorations. Calypso bluntly asks her father if he is feeling embarrassed by her questioning. Bellis teasingly calls it shyness, prompting Calypso to tease her father further. The narrator explains that formal duels are legally permitted during the festival. Calypso feels disappointed when her father refuses to react to her teasing. Bellis maintains a calm, quiet demeanor as he watches the father and daughter. Intrigued by his vast knowledge, Calypso eagerly asks Bellis to share more details. Bellis explains that attending the festival is highly dangerous due to hostile relations. He cryptically hints at a highly unique method to safely enjoy the festivities.
Bellis advises that the best strategy is to pose as defenseless prey.
Bellis sits back with a confident, mysterious smile amidst beautiful white flowers. He mockingly suggests Calypso dress up as a harmless sea bunny, infuriating her. Calypso flies into a rage, forcing Pierre to physically restrain her from attacking. Pierre calmly tells her to behave, noting she cannot defeat Bellis yet. Pierre offers to fight Bellis himself, causing a panicked Calypso to beg him to stop. Desperate to diffuse the tension, Calypso shifts the topic to the Dragon Duke. Pierre's vague reply shocks Calypso, making her realize she might not see him. Bellis confirms that the current Dragon Duke has never appeared in public since birth. Calypso is deeply shaken and frustrated by this highly disappointing and unexpected news. She internally compares a dragonless festival to their own estate without killer whales. Meanwhile, at the Aquazidatal estate, a secret meeting of conspirators takes place. I understand. Please provide the text, and I will read it back to you faster. He casually remarks on how easy it should be to eliminate his niece. The conspirator grimly confirms to his associate that the initial attempt failed. He expresses his frustration and demands that the next assassination attempt succeed. His anxious cohort asks if they should proceed despite Pierre's protective presence. The mastermind confidently plots that Pierre's daughter will not survive their next plan. He laughs mockingly in celebration while a mysterious pink-haired woman watches in silence. The elegant pink-haired woman smiles quietly, surrounded by a field of purple flowers. Back in the carriage, Calypso remains utterly devastated by the bad news. She keeps lamenting the absurdity of a dragon festival without a dragon. Pierre looks down at his slumped dramatic daughter with a touch of worry. Bellis calmly points out that the Dragon Duke's absence was common knowledge. Bellis muses on the reclusive Dragon Duke, noting his peaceful nature and regular absence from official events. A sudden wave of murderous intent fills the carriage, putting Pierre, Bellis, and Calypso on high alert. Calypso senses an impending attack as she braces herself while resting in her father's arms. A sudden violent explosion of water and debris completely disrupts their carriage ride. The carriage is forcefully struck and tilted sideways on the dusty forest road. Pierre steps out of the carriage wreckage onto the cracked ground with absolute composure. Calypso is completely dumbfounded by the carriage ambush, quickly realizing she is the target. Calypso deadpans as Pierre comfortably sprawls out in the wreckage as if lounging in bed. Calypso spots several hooded attackers outside the broken carriage and eagerly prepares to identify them. A massive geyser of water suddenly erupts, blasting the screaming attackers away. Pierre coldly dismisses the remaining threat, confidently predicting the attackers will be dead soon. Pierre elegantly steps away from the carriage wreckage, summoning water magic to protect his daughter. A large squad of hooded masked assassins stands ready to block their path. The assassins hesitate as Pierre and Bellis confront them with immense swirling water magic. Their family's mounted knights finally arrive at the scene, calling out to Pierre in a panic. Misa, the orange-haired nanny, rushes forward in absolute terror while calling for the princess. The maids swarm Calypso in a tearful embrace, expressing their shock over the sudden ambush. Calypso politely asks Pierre to put her down as he complains about guard duty. Calypso cheekily lectures Pierre for complaining, telling him to focus on protecting her maids instead. Misa weeps with immense relief as she wraps Calypso in a warm, protective embrace. Calypso calmly reassures her crying nanny, explaining that she was perfectly safe with her father. Calypso feels slightly overwhelmed but secretly pleased by all the loving attention from her nanny. The maids cheer happily upon seeing Calypso unharmed, celebrating her perfect safety. Calypso happily sits on a picnic blanket, eating snacks while getting ready to watch the battle. Pierre and Bellis coordinate effortlessly, using water magic to sweep away the surrounding hooded attackers. Bellis directs a sharp water strike, easily neutralizing another masked foe with precise combat skills. An assassin groans in pain as he is tightly bound by Pierre's swirling water whip. Calypso quietly eats her snack, analyzing the attackers and wondering if Branch family's mobilized water mages. Calypso ponders if her uncle's reckless attack stems from desperation over Bayon's fall. An assassin suddenly lunges forward with a sword, prompting a terrified scream from Misa. Misa shields Calypso with her body as the incoming blade is deflected with a bright flash. The attacker is stunned to see Calypso aggressively target his sword, mirroring her father's combat style. Calypso delivers a powerful flying triple kick to the attacker, striking him down with chibi justice. Pierre maintains his calm posture amidst swirling water as Calypso calls out to her master. Calypso angrily accuses Pierre of sending the attackers to test her, to which he bluntly agrees. Pierre raises his hand to unleash massive water magic, treating the ambush as simple combat training. Calypso hubs proudly, internally grumbling that she has over 10 years of real combat experience anyway. Calypso watches in awe as Bellis skillfully commands water magic to suppress the remaining assassins. Bellis looks back with striking, glowing blue eyes that radiate his immense potential and focus. Calypso steps forward with a determined expression, ready to take matters into her own hands. Calypso is startled when an assassin suddenly emerges from underground, grabbing her leg in a surprise ambush. Bellis gasps in shock as he desperately reaches out to save Calypso from the sudden trap. Calypso curses in frustration as she is violently dragged down into the crumbling earth. Misa screams in absolute despair as Calypso disappears into the muddy abyss before anyone can reach her. Calypso realizes she is trapped in a mudslide, suspecting a catfish beast man is behind the underground abduction. Calypso is hit with a jolt of purple electricity, suspecting an electric eel beastman's involvement in her capture. Despite being captured, Calypso refuses to give up and prepares to fight back immediately. Calypso delivers a powerful direct kick to her captor's hand to break free from his grip. Calypso tumbles deeper into the dark underground tunnel after successfully freeing herself. As she plunges into the pitch-black cavern, Calypso wonders if her counterattack was successful. An unseen searcher frantically wonders where the princess went as Calypso hides silently on the forest floor. The assassins call out to search thoroughly, prompting a confused Calypso to wonder where she is as they declare their mission to kill her. Calypso holds her breath as hooded assassins patrol the forest just inches away from her. Conspirators reiterate that their mission is complete once they kill her, urging the group to find her quickly. Calypso analyzes the surrounding terrain, realizing she has not been dragged very far from the original ambush site. Looking at the fallen assassin, Calypso deduces that the captor must have been a jellyfish beastman. Calypso pieces together that the carriage attackers were merely decoys, while the true threat lurked underground. Calypso suspects a stealthy accomplice hid their presence, concluding her uncle is too simple-minded to plan such a complex scheme. Calypso attributes the clever plot to her aunt, while a nearby assassin laments the death of their comrade. An assassin laments his fallen allies, prompting Calypso to plan a quiet escape. The assassins scatter to search, while Calypso wonders if they are moving away. Calypso cries out in pain but reminds herself she must keep moving immediately. Feeling her leg throb, she realizes prolonged fighting is out of the question. She resolves to avoid detection at all costs to survive the chase. Calypso looks around, desperately searching the forest floor for a safe hiding spot. Grabs a small blue snake-like creature and wonders what it could be. The small blue creature squeaks angrily, prompting a quick, startled apology from Calypso. Calypso apologizes for calling the creature a worm while it continues to squeak. Calypso warns the blue creature to be quiet because dangerous beastmen are patrolling. Seeing the creature instantly fall silent, Calypso suspects it possesses high intelligence. Believing it understands her, Calypso releases the creature and urges it to flee. Calypso bids farewell to her small companion as she prepares to move on. Quiet footsteps echo through the dense green woods as she cautiously advances. Hiding in a hollow, she reflects on surviving the forest in a past life. Calypso is shocked to find the blue creature has followed her into hiding. Calypso warns the creature of danger just as an assassin detects their noise. The searching assassins wonder if she was attacked and how she hid her tracks. Assassin guesses she has forest survival experience, which she silently confirms. Realizing she cannot stay hidden forever, she prepares to change her strategy. With considerable time having passed, she wonders if her father will find her. The little blue creature clings tightly to her collar, staying completely silent. Sudden movement behind her causes Calypso to gasp in surprise. A white rabbit suddenly bolts, forcing Calypso to realize she must leave her trap. Calypso flees from the burrow, but the waiting assassins immediately spot her. The assassins shout coordinates to each other, struggling to keep pace with her. Calypso's escape is cut short as several armed assassins corner her in a clearing. With absolute agility, she easily evades a barrage of throwing daggers aimed at her. Calypso grumbles inwardly about the lack of backup while continuing her swift retreat. A sudden magical spark strikes her ankle, causing her to cry out in distress. Stopping, Calypso calmly asks if they are working under the Bion faction. The assassins flinch when she correctly identifies their underground beastmen identities. While the assassins argue over the danger of their target, Calypso prepares to flee. After some frantic bickering, the reluctant assassins finally agree to proceed with their attack. Unsheathing his twin daggers, the lead assassin expresses his disappointment in the mission. The assassin readies his twin blades, preparing to sever any remaining ties. A sudden, powerful burst of water magic intervenes, deflecting the incoming attack. The assassin is completely caught off guard as a water spear pierces him. Horrified, the dying assassin realizes who has unleashed the devastating magical force. Screams of agony erupt as the remaining assassins are swept away by water. Calypso watches in awe as the relentless assault is effortlessly neutralized by water magic.
Bellis approaches calmly, water magic swirling as his striking blue eyes lock onto her.
Dramatic and completely exhausted, Calypso sits on the grass, comically declaring that she is dying. Regaining her composure, Calypso immediately asks Bellis if he left any of the assassins alive to serve as witnesses.
A footstep lands firmly on the grass as a voice reassures her not to worry about that.
A heavy, tense silence fills the forest as Bellis stands over her, radiating a dark aura. Sensing his ominous silence, Calypso directly asks him if he plans to kill her right now. Calypso mentally notes that this is his best chance to eliminate her, so she boldly warns him that their father will inevitably discover his treachery and execute him as well. The terrifying shadow of their father looms in Bellis's mind, warning him of the consequences. The two siblings stand in silent standoff, the heavy weight of her warning lingering.